Some people call me the space cowboy. Yeah. Some call me the gangster of love. Some people call me Maurice, 'cause I speak of the pompatus of love. People talk about me, baby. Say I'm doing you wrong, doing you wrong. Well, don't you worry, baby, don't worry, 'cause I'm right here, right here, right here, right here at home.
Oh, I'm singing along. Admit it, you're singing along too as we begin our time together for another week here on the program. It is Monday, the 12th of January, and that, of course, is Steve Miller. It was on this day in 1974. Let's see, how about 52 years ago that Steve Miller and his band were at number one on the U.S. singles chart with the song The Joker. It was their first of three number ones. It also reached number one on the UK chart in 1990. I don't know why it took till 1990 for the UK to catch up with that classic. Steve Miller and The Joker, number one on this day in 1974. I saw Steve Miller play in concert at what was then Molson Park in Barrie sometime in the early 1990s. It was not, and I repeat, not a great performance, but it was part of a really good day, beautiful summer's day. Lots of acts took the stage, but what I remember most, well, two things about Steve Miller's performance at Molson Park in Barrie on that particular July or whatever, summer afternoon in the early 1990s, was waiting and waiting. I wanted to hear Jet Airliner. Every time he finished one song, I'm like, play Jet. I was like the guy yelling, play Freebird at a concert, right? Play Jet Airliner. Let's go Jet Airliner. And finally, Jet Airliner came on. And then the guy that I had gotten to know, we became kind of friendly together as we were hanging out at this concert, really like celebrated the fact that Jet Airliner had finally come up in Steve Miller's set list that day. This same fellow that I became friendly with because, you know, you're in a packed park and you're hanging out and listening to some tunes and you chat with people. And he offered me some of the wacky tobacco a little bit earlier in the show. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't do that stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Although back then, technically, there was something wrong with that because, you know, there was a time, kids, in this country that the marijuana was not legal for you to consume. I'm still trying to figure out why you can smoke your joint in public, but I can't drink my beer. Nonetheless, I'm going to leave that right there. There's your tangent. Have you ever noticed with this show, it is all stream of consciousness, right? I have a plan. I even write my plan down. I've got a piece of paper right here in front of me. But as soon as I hear Steve Miller and the Joker, I'm taken back to Molson Park in Barrie in the early 1990s and the guy that offered me a joint at a concert. I hope your day is off to a great start. Hey, how about that winter weather, huh? Can we talk about the winter weather for just 1 second? That respite was beautiful. It was welcomed. I know that we all enjoyed it. What fascinates me about this particular winter, and the forecasters told us, this is exactly what they said would happen. We'd get more of, particularly from January onwards, more of these freezing rain type events as opposed to just snow. I went to Owen Sound on Saturday for a Kitchener Rangers game. Things were pretty tame. Ground was dry and clear when I left. And when I came home, I was walking on like a stale loaf of bread. Crunch, crunch, crunch. What? It can't just snow, can it? So we had everything cleaned up. Everything was fine. We got our respite. And then immediately, the next system doesn't just snow on us. It gives us this mess. And when Rosie the pandemic pup and I were out taking our walk yesterday, it wasn't overly slippery, but it was definitely icy. What are people to do? Honest to goodness. We want to be smart about salt, right? So I know we are using any kind of ice melter very sparingly, but what is one to do when it doesn't snow? It crusts, it freezes, it does the things that the weather has been doing. Connected to that, by the way, there have been concerns, and understandably so, about accessibility, particularly around our transit stops in the region. And we're going to discuss that at greater length on the show tomorrow. I hope you were listening to All News Mornings today with Christine Clark and Mark Douglas. If you were, and I suspect you were, because you're engaged in your community in this way, aren't you? You probably heard Josh Piercy reporting on the conversation that's being had in Waterloo around some sort of renoviction bylaw or some sort of support for local residents who are facing renoviction. We've talked about this an awful lot, so I suspect you understand that a renoviction is the idea of a landlord renovating an apartment unit under the guise of a quote-unquote renovation, but the idea is really just to get you out of there so that they can rent again with a new tenant at the current market rate, right? Because if you've been there for a while, your rent can only go up so much over time, and a lot of these landlords are looking at saying, well, there's more money to be made here, et cetera, and sometimes the renovation isn't much of a renovation at all, and tenants don't fully understand their rights in these situations, and so on it goes. Now, I've said this before, and look, I admire it. I admire municipalities responding to the concerns raised in the community, but I'm telling you, I believe, and you may believe otherwise, and that's absolutely fine. Different ideas are what make this show go round. But I believe this is a provincial issue to solve. I think that municipalities getting involved provides some sort of false hope to the residents who may be impacted by a renoviction, and we'll see where it goes. Other municipalities have done it, so will Waterloo do it? Well, one of the things from Josh Piercy's story this morning that really caught my attention is the recommendation from staff that council not pursue a renoviction bylaw in the city of Waterloo, for one reason anyway, being the cost of it, $800,000. But let me tell you this about council in the city of Waterloo. If there is a council in our community that is interested in raising your taxes, it would be council in Waterloo. And I don't say this simply to pick on anybody. I say this because the facts bear that out. If you were to look at this term, and remember, this is an election year, but since 2022, this term of Waterloo Council has raised taxes more than any other council, municipal council in our community, save for the region. From 2023 through 2026, the cumulative tax increase in Waterloo is 26.6%. 26.6. Next closest, Cambridge, at just over 20%, 20.5 to be exact. And then you've got Kitchener at 15.6%, cumulatively increasing your taxes over the last 4 years. But Waterloo is the runaway winner in that regard. If, of course, we leave out the regional government, which rings in at just about 34%. Yowza, over 4 years. Hey, how much did your salary go up in the past 4 years? Anyway, when I heard Josh's story and then Waterloo's talking about this potential renoviction bylaw, staff is saying it's going to cost. I'm like, cost? Waterloo Council doesn't care what it costs. They'll just increase your taxes. 26.6% over just this term of Waterloo Council. Remember, again, this is an election year. In October, late October, the 26th to be exact, we get to go to the polls and vote for a new municipal government. Or we'll just re-elect the same people, which is something we tend to do. But we get the choice, and that is what the important thing to remember is. One more quick thing, speaking of choice. You may recall not long before Christmas, I got my knickers in a knot. Shockingly, like, when's the last time you heard Farwell get his knickers in a knot? Yesterday? Oh, no, wait, I wasn't on the air yesterday. Friday, did I get my knickers in a knot? Well, I got my knickers in a knot just before Christmas around here because, I was ready to pull out the Grinch card right away when I came to work, and I realized that our sister stations here at the Boardwalk, Chime 96.7 and Country 106.7, had on their doors a festive Christmas-like wreath. And what was on my door? Nothing. A whole lot of nothing. Now, my beloved takes this to heart, me and my kvetching, right? It didn't bother me a whole lot, but I thought, well, why they got wreaths and I got nothing? So my beloved bought a bow that I have since affixed to the door to the studio here at 570 News Radio headquarters. But wouldn't you know, I come to work this morning, and the wreath is no longer on the door at Chime 96.7. And the wreath is no longer on the door at Country 106.7. But let me tell you right now what's still on the door here at 570 News Radio headquarters, and that is the bow. The festive bow still adorns the door here. But if there are no wreaths on the other doors to the other studios in this radio station, I'm asking myself, have I gone too far? It's January the ding-dang 12th. Surely I do not have to take the bow down yet, do I? Or do I? I'm not turning off my lights at home. I'll tell you that for free. I'm as cheap as the day is long. But I am not going to take down the Christmas lights just yet. We need the light in the winter darkness. But is it time for me to remove the bow from the studio door? Take down the Christmas decorations? You tell me. If you think it's time, I'll do it before the end of the show today. But I think I want to hang on for at least a little bit longer. It's not even the middle of January yet.
1, 2, 3, 4. Can I have a little more? 5,
All right, let's get to your
7, 8,
Farwell
9,
Show
10.
5 for this Monday morning, the 12th of January. Number 1 OPP in Brant County continue to investigate a fatal collision in the Glen Morris area. Happened Sunday morning. It involved a 68-year-old cyclist from Cambridge. OPP and emergency crews were called to the area of East River Road around 8:30 in the morning Sunday. Constable Andrew Gamble with Brant County OPP says a passing motorist saw an unresponsive cyclist in a ditch.
That cyclist sustained serious life-threatening injuries and was later pronounced deceased at the scene. The vehicle involved in this collision did not remain at the scene.
Police said the driver of the vehicle, a 65-year-old man from Brant County, did not remain at the scene but was later found and charged. Gamble says police are asking for anyone who lives in the immediate area and who may have witnessed the collision or have some dash cam footage to call Brant County OPP. Number 2, Prime Minister Mark Carney will meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing this week. He's scheduled to arrive on Wednesday for his short trip, which comes as the two countries try to restore stronger ties after years of trade and political tensions. International security, trade, energy, and agriculture are expected to be on the agenda. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, 2 new Kitchener Rangers acquired in a trade last week with the London Knights. Both have their first goals for our team, and they got those goals in fine fashion. Defenseman Jared Woolley scored his first goal on a breakaway in Kitchener's win over Oshawa on Friday, while Sam O'Reilly got his first Rangers goal in Kitchener's win over Owen Sound on Saturday. The interesting thing about both of those goals, they both came short-handed. Maybe it's been done before. 2 new players just acquired in a trade score their first goals for their new team short-handed, but if it has been done, it certainly could not have been done often. I think that's pretty cool. And just another note on that, having been around these guys for the weekend, and I saw Sam O'Reilly post something on his Instagram thanking his London teammates in the City of London and the Knights for the opportunity they provided him in this league. And it really struck me looking at these photos and watching these kids interact with one another over the weekend. They are just that, right? Kids. And imagine being 19 years old and the only team you have ever known, which becomes your community, right? That's your squad then, right? And you get moved to another team entirely in another city, a team that you used to really strongly dislike, didn't you? And you get put into a new billet home to get used to a new family. I feel for these guys. So just remember, as much as they used to play for the arch rival, these are kids playing hockey, and they're doing it for your team now, and it's probably a tough transition. I don't know why I got so Pollyanna all of a sudden. I was fired up about taxes a moment ago, but this is honest to goodness stuff here. So let's just remember that. It's a hell of an adjustment for these guys, and they put on a good performance for our team this weekend. Number 4 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Nikki Glaser opened the 83rd Golden Globes with a sharp monologue. She joked last night about stars possibly being in the Epstein files and took a jab at CBS for editing a critical 60 Minutes story. Did you hear that? She said that CBS won for best editing and then really just lived up to its name because when you watch it, you see BS. Pretty good by Nikki Glaser. She also poked fun at Leonardo DiCaprio's dating habits, then apologized for making what she described as such an obvious joke, saying she had no choice because DiCaprio's dates don't know anything about him. Number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning. Despite all the discussions around mindful drinking, dry January, and alcohol-free cocktail options, a new study suggests Canadians are not drinking less these days. In fact, it's just the opposite, according to the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health. Alcohol consumption is up compared to before the pandemic. And if you're wondering why, I don't know about you, but all I can think about is our buddy, Hamilton beer store guy.
How much would you drink a day?
Well, what day? A regular day, I don't know, maybe a couple of beers, depends. Weekends, maybe, 5 beer. 2 drinks a week.
What do you think of that?
Well, that's just not feasible, not in this country.
Not in this country. We're a little stressed out. Maybe it's the local taxes. Maybe it's the federal taxes. That is your Farwell Show 5 for your Monday morning. All right, we're going to take a quick time out, but it's Monday morning, and that means it's time for your wake-up call on the show. Phone lines are open to you, and we'll use them to our advantage right after this. It's the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The minute we begin this show every day, our phone lines are open to you because it is the most interactive radio program you'll find anywhere in this region. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Let's get to our morning wake-up call for this Monday, the 12th of January. Mike is with us, Farwell's Force member number 37. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Michael. I'm going to give you some advice on when to take down the Christmas decoration.
All right, I'm here for it because the bow is still on the door, my friend.
Yeah, well, the Mother Marg up here, who's 88 years old, has always had this hard and fast rule. When it's the Three Kings Day, right, that Sunday you take down the Christmas decoration. And if you're Orthodox, you're granted 1-week extension. So that's Mother Marg's rule.
That was my mother's rule as well. As soon as the Epiphany rolled around, that's it. The Christmas decorations were gone.
Yeah. So now the other thing I want to talk to you about is this 26% raise in taxes in the city of Waterloo. If there was ever a poster child for recall elections, that city council is that poster child. Mike, how can you justify it? And this is what happens when you elect activists and you don't act people who can be adults in the room and provide financial sustainability. And that's my thoughts, Michael.
All right, Mike, I appreciate the call and the thoughts on what you heard. Look, 26.6% cumulatively in Waterloo, 20.5% in Cambridge, and 15.6% in Kitchener. 4-year inflation in Ontario, 15.6%. Isn't that funny how Kitchener comes right in at that number and the other two municipalities? And don't even get me started on the region, 34% over this term of council. Just sharing the numbers. Knowledge is power. Sean is with us on the morning wake-up call. Morning, Sean.
Good morning, Mike. Question about your bow. What does the bow look like? Is it like a super Christmassy bow, or is it just like a decorative bow?
That is an excellent question, my friend. I should have also mentioned I posted the picture on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Mike Farwell Show. I would say, and maybe I'm being biased, but I think I could just get away with this being a decorative bow. It's got some white frill around it, and it's red and green. But I don't know. It doesn't say Merry Christmas or anything.
Okay, in that case, you can get away with it. Because, like, if you're a traditionalist, 12-day is the 5th of January, which is the 12th day of Christmas. Now, Epiphany, by the Western calendar, which I'm going hard here, Western calendar is, by the Gregorian one, is the 6th day of January. That's Epiphany. Now, if you're following the Orthodox calendar, of course, it's a little bit different, right? So if it's lights, I give a pass, because lights, I mean, hey, you could be, for all I know, you're celebrating a Hindu ceremony. I don't know, right? Or it could be for like a winter carnival. So lights are okay with me. They're just nice. But yeah, if the bow's not too Christmassy, I say stick with it. Oh, and on those taxes, let me tell you, the employees of the municipalities are not getting a 25% raise, by the way.
All right, Sean. Thank you for that. Okay. And in fairness, and I'll take you at your word because I think you know a thing or two about that. That said, I'll bet you the employees at the municipality are getting a better raise than the private sector is, but I'll just leave that over there. I didn't know it would get so technical when it came to the bow or the decorations and all of this around the calendar. My goodness gracious. As for the lights, you can call it what you want. I call it lighting the darkness of winter. I'm going to keep those suckers going at least until the end of the month, cheap as I may be. Tony is with us on the morning wake-up call. Morning, Tony.
Morning, Mike. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
As far as the lights and stuff, decorations go, my general rule of thumb is whenever my wife tells me to get the boxes in the garage.
You're a smart man, Tony. I learn a lot from these conversations with you.
Well, we've been married as long as I have. It's better to be happy than right.
I understand.
That's how I look at it.
Appreciate it.
as far as the taxes go, my rule of thumb would be if politicians can't keep the taxes no more than 3%, like inflation, then they shouldn't be able to rerun for election. I mean, their job is to keep taxes down like they always promise us they're going to, but it seems like their spending is out of control. So that's just my opinion, Mike.
All right, Tony. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sorry I cut you there. Have a good day to you too, my friend. And I do wonder about this. I wonder about increases that go over and above inflation. Again, 4-year running inflation in Ontario, 15.6%. That's where we find Kitchener coming in with its tax increase over this term of council. 20.5% in Cambridge, 26.6% in Waterloo, and almost 34% at the regional level. We're going to talk more about taxes, particularly municipal taxes, with Regional Councillor Doug Craig coming up just after the 9:30 update from the 570 News Center. But these numbers were on my mind this morning, especially after I heard Josh Piercy's story about a potential renoviction bylaw in Waterloo, the staff recommendation. Hey, you know what? People might not be able to afford this. It's going to cost the city $800,000. But I thought, well, when it comes to spending, Waterloo seems to enjoy that. And I understand there are always extenuating circumstances. Things come up that might drive up a tax increase one year. But again, just looking at the numbers, Kitchener, 15.6, Cambridge, 20.5, Waterloo, 26.6 over this term of council. Just before we get to that update in the 570 News Center, it is Monday. But who doesn't want to look ahead to Friday, right? Just 4 days away. And on Fridays on this show, we do something called All Request Fridays, where you can hear a little bit of your favorite song by request. We always put a theme on it as well. And I got to thinking about this over the weekend. And then I heard Carl Hansky's story this morning about dry January and how we're actually not drinking less. But I've heard a lot of people talking about it. I might also be participating to some degree, thinking maybe a little bit, how about drier January than December, because I enjoyed some imbibing over the holidays. But if we are engaging in some form of dry January, maybe we miss our drink or two. So why don't we have one figuratively with our All Request Friday theme this week? I want your best drinking songs. The theme this week for All Request Friday is booze. You fill the theme however you want, but we'll celebrate with some drinking songs on All Request Friday this week. Make your request by dropping me an email, mike@570news.com, or when you call in, just let Jen on the other side of the glass know which song you would like to hear. It's your drinking song, All Request Friday this week on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I mean, you'd almost swear I planned it, right? I told you, I've got a pad of paper right in front of me. I'm old school. I'll still make notes on that pad of paper to try to keep me on track. Listen, you're not the problem. Believe you me, it's not you. It's me. I get off onto these stream of consciousness tangents from time to time, but I did intentionally remind you, after listening to Josh Piercy's story this morning about the upcoming conversation at Waterloo Council about a potential rent-eviction bylaw, the staff recommendation that says, whoa, let's pump the brakes a little bit. It's going to be costly, $800,000. You just heard Christine reference it in that 9:30 update from the 570 News Center. And I pointed out to you the tax increases over this term of council in Kitchener, Cambridge, and Waterloo. Kitchener being the lowest, Cambridge in the middle, Waterloo the highest. And I did that intentionally because we are going to talk now about the local taxpayer and the burden that we as local taxpayers are being asked to shoulder. You've probably noticed it's getting pretty expensive around here. And I don't necessarily, I still believe that any time that we are increasing over and above inflation, there had better be a pretty strong reason for it. I understand that our municipal councils are faced with really difficult decisions. I am in no way sitting here trying to make it sound easy on council's side of things. But that said, they signed up for the difficult job. And it is getting expensive around here. Why might that be? Are there other factors beyond municipal councils that just spend more, perhaps, than they ought? I think there are. And we're going to get into those other possible factors in this conversation with Regional Councillor Doug Craig, who joins us to talk about it. And Doug, let's just start with the local taxpayer, because that's what we're focused on here, and what it is we as local taxpayers are being asked to shoulder these days.
Well, they're being asked to shoulder too much in terms of the amounts of taxes that they're being asked to hand over every year. And we know the municipal governments, the mayors and councillors all have asked for sustainable funding from the province to lessen the burden on local taxpayers. And that hasn't happened. And so we're once again forced with, quote, at the regional level, where I said a 5% increase, which is, in my opinion, very unsustainable for a number of people in the community.
I'm glad you brought up that local increase of 5% at the regional level, because when we are talking about the burden, and I know there are other issues we'll get into here federally and provincially, but the reality, Doug, is over this term of regional council, of which you are a member, more than 30% taxes have been raised. That's far and above any other municipality in this region.
That's true. It's absolutely true. But also, we have the burden, or we have the issue with the homeless issue and with the addiction issue, with the housing issues, all of which are not municipal responsibilities that have been downloaded onto the regional levy, and the local taxpayer is paying for provincial programs. That's what's happening.
Let's talk about the property tax system itself. You've described this as outdated. Explain to us where we were and why it maybe hasn't changed.
Well, it's based on, as I said in an article, it's based on a farming economy in the 19th century, and it does not sustain a modern society in terms of the needs with regards to all the things that are needed in a modern society, a modern community. And it's outdated. It certainly hurts seniors and people on fixed incomes, because you may be property rich, but you may be on a fixed income in that property. And that's the problem with the property tax. And I think there needs to be a great reform across Ontario.
As a regional councillor, you have a more direct, I won't say it is directly direct, if you'll forgive that phrase, but you do have a more direct line to provincial and federal politicians. Can you make any headway in this regard? Do they sound responsive?
Well, you have to remember how this whole thing is set up. We are simply, it's like a 14th century feudal system. We're the vassals, reporting to the nobility. And we have no power. Look at what Premier Ford has done across this province, whether you agree or don't agree, in terms of banning speed cameras, bike lanes, MZOs, strong mayor powers. All of these are an erosion of local democracy, and all of these put us in a very subservient role as regional and city councillors.
Do you believe that the province respects municipalities?
Not at all. Never has. It respects us if we're quiet. And that's why municipal politicians don't come out and band together across the province to start arguing and yelling and screaming about what's going on, because they know that through provincial powers they can be, downplayed or hampered in any time by the province. It's not a great system. It really isn't.
We talk often, Doug, about downloading services that the province was once responsible for in terms of paying for those services, with the tax base, of course, income taxes, et cetera, spread out province-wide. And those responsibilities have been downloaded onto municipalities. You already referenced homelessness. I think we can look at public health and mental health to some degree, yes, housing, and I know the feds play a role in that too. But what impact has downloading had on the region of Waterloo?
Well, you're looking at a $277 million impact on the regional levy. So that equates out to a considerable amount of money in terms of the average individual. So we have to absorb that, and we essentially have to pass that on to the local taxpayer. And I totally disagree with all of this. Of course, the province moves it from their ledgers to our ledgers, and we get all the criticism. And that's exactly what's been going on.
You said earlier that the province respects municipalities when they're quiet. You and I have had this similar conversation several times in the past. I don't think you're being quiet, Councillor Craig. Are you worried about any repercussions?
Well, for me personally, no. They're not going to do anything to me. I mean, they're just ignoring me. But I think the point being, if more and more politicians, local politicians across the province, were to start banding together and bringing to the forefront a public crusade about what is happening, then they would start listening. But they're not listening now, believe me.
Isn't that what the Association of Municipalities of Ontario is for?
Absolutely. And I may disagree with the association, but I expect a lot more from them than what we're getting.
Before I let you go, I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up, and I thought of it when you mentioned that municipal politicians get the criticism. Boy, oh boy, did our regional council, yourself included, you seemed to be the focus of the criticism at a meeting last week around amendments to our site-specific bylaw for Weber and Victoria, where the homeless encampment is. How are you feeling today, Doug, following that meeting last Wednesday night?
That was a very important meeting. It just simply got out of hand. And that happens when people get very emotional and very personal about what is happening. I think it really reflects on the fact of the lack of provincial intervention to help municipalities with the homeless issue. I mean, we're stuck in this whole thing right now, and we can't move one way or the other because of the judicial legislation, which prevents us from arbitrarily moving people or helping people or whatever we may want to do. So it's quite a difficult situation for local politicians.
Is this an example, perhaps, of a frustrated public laying, I don't know if blame's the right word, but taking out their frustrations at the wrong level of government?
Well, I would agree with you on that. But you see, we're the most accessible level of government. And I think that's the whole point. And because of that, it is our responsibility, one of which we accept, is to listen to people. But the people that need to be there, that should have been there, were the MPs and MPPs. They're not there. And if you call them together to come to a meeting like that, they won't show up.
Doug, I appreciate your time on the show today. Thank you very much for being here.
Always a pleasure. Take care.
Doug Craig is a regional councillor who represents Cambridge. Joins us on the show this morning to talk about the burden that we are facing, the collective we, but just the we here within the borders of the region of Waterloo, are facing when it comes to taxes. And it's not unfair to say that the downloading from upper levels of government has really hurt. we've got to be over a year now. I don't remember the first time, and I apologize for that, when the suggestion that a new fiscal arrangement needs to be agreed upon between municipalities and the province. But it's been a long time, and we have talked about this on multiple occasions, and there is no sign of movement. And just to go back to that, because I think this comes to the fore when you look at what happened at Regional Council last week, when upwards of 20 delegates showed up to talk to council, or to express really their frustration with local council, regional council, and regional council's inability to properly support the people who are living in the encampment at Weber and Victoria. By the way, those same people who have been supported for years already, right? The region has done a lot of heavy lifting in that regard. And the other side of the equation from people living in this region is, hang on a second here. Like, we keep pouring money into this. Why are we doing that? And the bigger question as to why, make no mistake about this, please, I am not trying to excuse the local government from all responsibility here. But if you don't understand that both the provincial and federal governments have a role to play in this, then we've got a real problem here. And this is the problem that municipal councils are facing. So Doug Craig kind of shrugs and says, I get it. We are the most accessible. And I do think there was some meeting. I don't know that every MPP and MP showed up, but I feel like there was some meeting recently enough between local councillors and MPPs and MPs. Did it bear fruit? Obviously not. You will hear from upper levels of government that they've invested in this and they've invested in that, right? And look at the numbers that they'll throw out. And then remember, those are numbers that are province-wide or nationwide. Housing accelerator funds, building faster funds, mental health supports. These are all wonderful things. They are nationwide. Right here in this region, the plan to end chronic homelessness is upwards of $350 million. 1/3 of $1 billion being paid for by folks here in the region of Waterloo. And I'm not saying necessarily that's a bad thing. We want to help our neighbors. I know we want to help our neighbors. But $350 million just in the region of Waterloo invested in that plan over 7 years. Where are the investments from upper levels of government? And that is part of it. You heard Doug say $270+ million in local expenses paid by us, downloaded from upper levels of government. Yes, we need a new fiscal arrangement. How long do we talk about it before there's action taken? Because I promise you this, we keep talking about nation building and this thing and that thing. You cannot build a nation on a crumbling foundation. And cities are starting to buckle under the weight of this stuff. That's the way I see it from where I'm sitting. I'm paying the same taxes you are, and it's not that easy to do. Your thoughts always welcome on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Well, you're looking at a $277 million impact on the regional levy. So that equates out to a considerable amount of money in terms of the average individual. So we have to absorb that, and we essentially have to pass that on to the local taxpayer. And I totally disagree with all of this. And, of course, the province moves it from their ledgers to our ledgers, and we get all the criticism. That's exactly what's been going on.
That is Regional Councillor Doug Craig, who has appealed to this cause in the past, and he appeals to it again. He says, listen, as municipal taxpayers, people living in any municipality in this province are being asked to shoulder too much of the burden. Here in the region of Waterloo, by the numbers, we're looking at more than $270 million, 277 to be exact, according to Doug's figures, that are being used locally to make up for shortfalls in provincial funding and federal to some degree when it comes to social housing, public health, shelters, and available childcare. Those are some of the issues that have been downloaded onto the backs of municipalities. And you may be a little bit like me when you hear stories like this. Doug wrote an op-ed to this effect, and you might just roll your eyes and say, okay, well, Doug's at it again. But and it's not just Doug. We've heard this idea of new fiscal agreement, new fiscal arrangement, whatever you want to call it, from Regional Chair Karen Redmond, from Waterloo Mayor Dorothy McCabe, Kitchener Mayor Barry Verbanovic. It just keeps coming up and coming up and coming up. And yet nothing is being done about it. At least not yet, not that I've heard. And some way, somehow, we've got to get this message to our locally elected MPPs, our locally elected MPs. We have to find our way around this stuff so that we can have a meaningful conversation about what needs to be done and hopefully get some action. Because again, provincially and federally, you've got a much greater base to collect the tax from. Not only are you talking 14 million people here in the province of Ontario, but you've got income taxes and a variety of other levers you can pull. Here in the region, it's a property tax, and that is all. It's not sustainable the way that it is. I don't know if we're screaming into the wind here, but I, for one, am not going to get tired of doing the screaming because I'm dead set on this. It absolutely needs to happen. And the unwillingness of upper levels of government to engage in these conversations is frustrating the ever-loving heck out of me. I can promise you that. Okay, as we talk about taxes and everything that we're being asked to pay and our frustrations with it, it might be the best time to remind you that not everybody is a jackwagon, okay? This is something that I have added to our show for 2026. I will do this every single day so that you never forget that not everybody is a jackwagon. And certainly our KW Titans and Cambridge City Councillor Scott Hamilton are not jackwagons. Councillor Hamilton, Ward 7 in Cambridge, was at a Titans game a couple of weeks ago. And at that game, he was selected from the crowd to take a three-point shot. And if he sunk it, he would win a laptop. And he says, no, don't take me. Take one of these kids here that are at the game. Let them take the shot at a free laptop. But eventually, he was cajoled into doing it. And so he did, if he could donate the laptop to a charity. And wouldn't you know, Councillor Hamilton, basketball star that he is, hit the three-pointer, won the laptop, and immediately turned around and said, do you know who really needs this laptop? The Preston Heights Community Group. They could really use that laptop to help out with the programming that they offer in the Preston Heights area. And so the laptop, won by Councillor Hamilton, donated to the Preston Heights Community Group. But that's not all. The KW Titans then, learning of Councillor Hamilton's generosity and the need at the Preston Heights Community Group, says, you know what? Not only is that laptop going to the Preston Heights Community Group, but we are going to gift more than 60 tickets to an upcoming KW Titans game for youth and their families in the Preston Heights Community Group and Lang's neighborhoods of Cambridge. So the councillor gets the shot to win the laptop. If he sinks a three-pointer, he does. He donates the laptop to an organization in Cambridge. The KW Titans say, you know what? We can do something here to support as well. More than 60 tickets for Preston Heights Community Group and Lang's neighborhoods so that families can go to a future KW Titans game. Good things happening right here in the region of Waterloo. Not everybody is a jackwagon. I'm going to get you an update from the 570 News Center, and then let's talk about high-speed rail in Canada. Don't laugh at me. Don't roll your eyes at me, but I will ask you this question. Of the priorities when it comes to nation building here in the country, is high-speed rail the highest of those priorities? That's what we'll talk about next on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We have talked on several occasions on this show about high-speed rail, and we have expressed some frustration about the lack of such infrastructure in this country, perhaps even right through the heart of our region of Waterloo, right? Because when high-speed rail gets talked about, it often comes to references about a link from Windsor straight through southern Ontario and into Quebec. That's how long the link could be. Of course, in the modern age, that would cost untold billions and billions of dollars. However, about a month ago, you may recall, the federal government announced its plans to build at least a first leg of high-speed rail, which would be a 200-kilometer stretch of rail between Montreal and Ottawa. Great idea, right? Well, I mean, it's got its critics, or at least its skeptics, one of them perhaps being Maddie Simiatiki, who's the director of the Infrastructure Institute and a professor of planning at the University of Toronto. Maddie, good morning.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks very much for making the time. I'll admit that I am quite passionate about this particular issue. I was a part of a little bit of a barn-raising tour decades ago talking about high-speed rail and that link from Windsor all the way through to Quebec. So I greeted this news with temperate, maybe tepid enthusiasm. I mean, Montreal to Ottawa, meh, when we need so much more. And after all, this country was built on rail, was it not? Connecting coast to coast, so to speak. Why are you skeptical of what's been announced here federally?
So I share your passion for rail travel, and just like many Canadians, when I'm overseas, I love rail and take it all the time and really enjoy it. I think the key thing in our context is we have so many needs in this country. We have 6 million Canadians without a family doctor. We have drinking water issues right across the country, including in Indigenous communities. We have our public transit systems, which carry 1.6 billion trips per year, which are falling apart, and where it's becoming increasingly hard for people just to get to their jobs within their own cities, let alone get between our cities. So this is a project that has been around for a long time. There's been ideas around this since at least going back to the 1970s. But the cost for this 1,000-kilometer line is somewhere between $60 and $90 billion, and likely to be even more. And that is such a huge chunk of change that I just think could be spent much better elsewhere.
What do you think the motivation is then, Maddie, for the government being so interested in at least this stage of light rail or of high-speed rail?
I think there are tangible goals, and there are the sort of more symbolic nailed ideas. On the table side, we have a huge issue getting between our cities. There's no doubt about that. I mean, VIA has become, it's a charming, quaint service when you're on there, but in terms of the travel times, it's slow and unreliable and frustrating. So we do have to do something there. And I think there's also just this view that getting between cities will boost our economy. And there's some truth to that, but really people being able to get to their jobs within their own city is really the key. And then on the symbolic side, you just hear people saying, well, this will be great for nation building. And the irony of that is this is 1,000 kilometers in a country that's like tens of thousands of kilometers of landmass. I mean, anyone west of Toronto is not getting any connection, and we're spending $60 to $90 billion. So, I understand how it harkens back to our country's founding, but this is something just markedly different, and I think this amount of money could be spent much better elsewhere.
And you presented some great examples for that, right? Healthcare being one of them, drinking water on reserves, another absolutely noble pursuit and something that should have been done some time ago. If we were to continue moving down this path, or if we use this as an example, let's say that transportation infrastructure is an important nation-building priority, are there other pieces of transportation infrastructure you think we should invest in instead?
100%. I think investing in our urban transit systems is by far the best investment we could have. I mean, just to put this in perspective, the VIA corridor today between in the Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Quebec City corridor is carrying about 4 million passengers. And as I mentioned before, our urban transit systems nationwide are carrying 1.6 billion trips per year, and they're becoming unreliable. And I actually think Kitchener-Waterloo is a perfect example of what can happen when effective public transit gets built. I mean, the ION system, I was on that system, or in and around it anyway, recently, and just to see the development around it, to see how it's changed communities is remarkable. And just to put a fine point on this, I came to Kitchener-Waterloo for a day, an overnight and then a day. And on the way out, when I was traveling with the crowd, it was great on Go. But coming back, I mean, it was a Go bus to another train. The Go bus was so busy, it was standing room only on the Go bus on the highway. That can't be safe. So, there's other places we could be making these investments that I think would have a much bigger impact on people's day-to-day lives rather than a high-speed rail line that really, frankly, like how often do you travel to Montreal or Ottawa or Quebec City? I mean, it's a nice to have for most people, not a need to have. And I think at this point in where we're at as a country, we need to be focusing on the most urgent issues first.
If the federal government is hell-bent on making even one leg of this a reality and pursuing high-speed rail in this country, Maddie, is there any guidance or advice you would give them on that path forward?
Yeah, and Mike, this is one of the ironies of this, is that I'm actually on an advisory panel trying to help Alto, who's the company delivering this. And I said this in my Globe and Mail piece. If this is going to go ahead, I want this to be a success because the downside is catastrophic. I mean, we have projects there's projects in California and now in Britain where the costs have just spiraled to such an extent that there's a likelihood that they'll never get finished. And they certainly won't get finished to the way that they were proposed. So I think in our case, a few things. The land acquisition is really key and being able to do that efficiently. And the government has put forward a bill that's going to help move that forward. And that's contentious. That's about how you do expropriations and how much consultation is needed. But that one is there. And then once it's approved and once they're building, this needs to be done extremely quickly. Going fast is one of the key ways that you avoid having cost overruns and delays down the road. We need effective project leadership. We've often lacked real leadership, which is different than project management. Streamlining the processes and the permitting, that can take a really long time. Making sure we have a workforce. I mean, we have an aging workforce and people retiring. We're going to need people to build this in places where they're not currently living, in more rural areas. So we need people who are going to be able to build this. Building using modular approaches is another way that other countries have become more efficient. So there are strategies to use, and I'm hoping that if this is going to go forward, that my contribution and others can help put it on the right track.
What is making it so difficult these days for projects like this? You cite California and Britain and the challenges they have faced. What's making it so difficult?
Some of it is technical. I mean, these things are hard and they become more complicated. And I do think we have to acknowledge that it's not quite the same as building a train 150 years ago. You're basically building a mobile IT project. And as we know with IT projects, those can be complicated. And then you overlay the steel and concrete aspect of it, and that's hard too. But I think in some ways, the permitting and the land acquisition and the community opposition in Britain, for example, that has been a huge driver of rising costs. And same in California. I mean, it just dragged the planning out, and it dragged, the cost of mitigating some of the local harms really just made delayed the project and made the costs go up to the point where now, I mean, the parts that are being connected, it's like Merced and Bakersfield are going to be the first areas connected. And I don't think that pops into anyone's mind as the first areas that they would want high-speed rail between. So that's one. And then really just leadership. I mean, there's been a vacuum of leadership at the top of these projects of people. It's not, you're running a temporary organization that's essentially becomes a Fortune 500 company overnight. And that's hard, and we've treated these as project management projects rather than as project leadership projects. And I think that's an area where we need transformation too.
I'm so glad we could get your perspective on the show today. Maddie, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike.
Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Maddie Simiatiki is the director of the Infrastructure Institute and a professor of planning at the University of Toronto. He also hosts the Good for Cities podcast, and he joins us to talk about his skeptical view of our plans federally for one of our nation-building projects to finally get moving on a high-speed rail project. Now, the first leg would be built in just a 200-kilometer stretch between Montreal and Ottawa. And if you'll forgive me, if I could be so bold as to suggest, because you heard Maddie make reference a number of times there, to a 1,000-kilometer high-speed rail line. So obviously the math is pretty easy. That's 1/5 of the entire line. But what if we were to consider what's happening here in the region of Waterloo right now? around high order transit. And Maddie also made reference to our Ion light rail system. But instead of doing the whole kit and caboodle at once, we decided to phase it. We are in the process of approving phase 2 at a cost of 3 times phase 1. And there is some pushback, and you would understand why. I mean, we opened phase 1 in 2019, and here we are 7 years later. Granted, the costs for phase 2 are baked into ultimately getting this thing started and finished in the next decade or so, but nonetheless, 3 times the cost. And consider the opposition and what might arise to get in the way of phase 2. All of which is to say, if 1,000 kilometers is necessary and we're only starting at 200, I personally shudder at what the final 4/5 of that system ultimately look like if we're doing it in legs like that. Even that notwithstanding, as you heard from our guest at the University of Toronto, high-speed rail is not, in his mind, as much as he supports investments in transportation infrastructure, this particular project should not be high on the list of priorities when it comes to nation-building projects in this country. And even if we were to go down the transit route and say we do need something, we do need significant investment in public transit infrastructure, it should be at the local level, not something that serves so little of the population overall. Interesting arguments. I could talk about rail and high-speed rail all day and how frustrated I get knowing when I'm stuck in traffic on a 401, there is a rail line over there that doesn't get used to its full capacity, at least for moving people anymore. It was the railways that united us more than a century ago, and we can't get trains moving quickly on those same rail lines today. It is a crying shame, in my opinion. But where would you put high-speed rail on the list of priorities for nation-building projects? Is this something that you can get excited about? Is this something you can get behind? Your thoughts always welcome. I look forward to them, in fact, on the Mike Farwell Show. Phone lines are open on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
There's other places we could be making these investments that I think would have a much bigger impact on people's day-to-day lives rather than a high-speed rail line that really, frankly, like how often do you travel to Montreal or Ottawa or Quebec City? I mean, it's a nice to have for most people, not a need to have. And I think at this point in where we're at as a country, we need to be focusing on the most urgent issues first.
And even if transportation infrastructure were an urgent issue, invest in local transit infrastructure, which our guest from the University of Toronto, Maddie Simiatiki, says is crumbling, that local transit infrastructure. Maddie is also the director of the Infrastructure Institute and the host of the Good Four Cities podcast. What do you think of high-speed rail as a nation-building project? How high a priority is it for you? 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Let's go to the phones, get your opinions on it. Rob, start us off. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well here. I was just listening to the segment with your guest, and I think I'd like to voice my support for building the high-speed rail. I look at it this way. Nation-building projects just aren't simply about, building some defense and everything else. Things that are going to begin to tie the country together and allow us to pretty much intermingle with one another and start to build more ties with one another is always something that is going to build a nation as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be sheerly economic in your nation building. He talked about he's been in other countries and used their rail. He kind of is a little dismissive as if it's just, a little luxury. But, in these other countries where these rail networks, they're absolute lifelines to get between cities, and people do move between cities much more frequently because they have that option. As right now, we don't really have that option because, I have relatives in Ottawa, but, a 6-hour drive up there is not something I want to entertain all the time. But a nice relaxing ride on a high-speed rail will get me up there in about 3 hours or so. is something I would certainly consider doing far more often than taking a drive up there.
Rob, I couldn't agree more, truly, when it comes to that idea. And if we could make that the reality of high-speed rail, I'm with you. I'll even take that train ride with you, and I'll just go visit Parliament and stuff. You can visit the relatives. Thanks for weighing in this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you on the show. It gets to the idea, Rob does, really very much like the original intent of rail in this country, right? It was to connect us as a nation, and that's what Rob's getting at. Put aside the economic arguments, et cetera, and look at some of those softer, maybe more intangible things. Again, as long as we don't fall into the traps that California and Britain have currently fallen into when they've tried such infrastructure projects. And I do worry a little bit about our capacity these days to do big, great things. But nonetheless, I like where Rob's coming from. I've always been passionate about rail. That said, our guest from the Infrastructure Institute at the University of Toronto would know a thing or two about this, and he's a little bit skeptical at what we're proposing right now. Mike, what do you think? Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. I'm in favor of doing high-speed rail and, in addition, revamping our public transit system. I think that professors should join the Highway 7-8 Club because a lot of these guys are obstructionists and we don't get anything built. All you have to look at is the LRT, Eglinton LRT in Toronto, and it just proves Toronto politicians and subject matter experts just delay things. And the cost of doing nothing is not nothing. Mike, can you imagine if we would have built the Cambridge LRT extension? It would be done by now, and it probably wouldn't cost 4 or 5 times as much. So I think we need to stop worrying about, how much it may cost in the long run. It's just like the Conestoga Parkway. If we didn't have that, Kitchener-Waterloo would be looking a lot different now. So those are my thoughts, sir.
All right, Mike, appreciate the call. Join the Highway 7-8 Club. I get it. If you are here and you are trying to get there and you are sitting in traffic like we usually do, you'd understand the appeal. And I like Mike's point that the cost of doing nothing isn't nothing. That's a good reminder in all of this. Let's not forget that we as a nation, and I'll emphasize again that it was rail that united us more than a century and a half ago. Forget just a century ago, more than a century and a half ago. We are the last G7 country standing without a high-speed rail network. And I, for one, find that a wee bit on the embarrassing side. Just to go back, though, to what Mike was mentioning there about join the Highway 7-8 Club. In other words, walk a mile or drive a mile in our shoes here in the region of Waterloo. That occurred to me, and here comes your stream of consciousness tangent, but I'm sure you've heard some of the uproar around air travel, particularly WestJet, the new seating, how cramped it is. And look, I'm 5'0". I'm not going to be one to complain a whole lot, but federally, like in this country, why do we not put a greater emphasis on making air travel more enjoyable for the folks that get on planes? Like air travel in Canada kind of sucks, doesn't it? Am I being fair? Am I being unfair? And I thought about that as I've been following these stories from the airline industry. And it occurred to me, it's probably because those people who are charged with creating the policies or making the regulations, et cetera, don't fly normal economy class like the rest of us, right? If you're at the top end of it all, you're going to have a private plane taking you places. And I'll bet you my bottom dollar that when MPs are hopping flights, they ain't sitting in economy WestJet, let me tell you. So how would they know what the rest of us experience? Anyway, just a bit of a tangent there as we get you ready for an update from the 570 News Center. And then let's talk about the significance of today. Yes, this day and the number of days it marks in the Russia-Ukraine war, because there is an interesting connection to the number of days this conflict has raged on. We'll talk about it as we continue the Mike Farwell Show this morning. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The war in Ukraine rages on. Meantime, it may be getting further and further onto that back burner as we turn our attention to more and different things, including the U.S. taking control of Venezuela, President Donald Trump signaling that Greenland may be next, and the internal conflict within the United States of America and that awful shooting of a woman in Minneapolis. All of these things contributing to a bit of a distraction, if you will, from, again, that ongoing war in Ukraine. But it just so happens that today, this January the 12th, marks 1,418 days since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And that number, 1,418, just so happens to be a rather significant number. And to learn more about that, we're joined by our friend Andrew Basso, who's a professor of political science at Wilfrid Laurier University and a fellow at the Balsley School of International Affairs. Andrew, it's always good to talk to you. Good morning.
Hi, Mike. Likewise. Thanks for having me on.
It's always a pleasure. What is it about this number, 1,418, that is so significant?
That number is quite significant for Russian Soviet history as well. That is the number of days that the Soviets fought the Nazis in the Second World War. So in Russia, the Second World War, it's not necessarily called the Second World War. It's called the Great Patriotic War. And the Great Patriotic War lasted 1,418 days. And when you think about the centrality of Nazism and fighting against Nazism to Russian culture, we all have your listeners recall that Vladimir Putin, he made a major play at the beginning of his so-called special military operation in Ukraine, saying they were going in to denazify Ukraine. I said then, and I'll say now, to call someone a Nazi there is an extreme slight. That's about as bad as you could get. Nazism is at the core of and fighting against Nazism is at the core of Russian strategic culture. It's just so ironic that it so happens that now we are at the same number of days as the Second World War, and Russia seems to be on the other side of the coin now. It's Ukraine very much trying to resist this aggressive war making, and against all odds, it has held out for all of these days. It's truly a spectacular sight in modern warfare, that is for sure.
So as we approach, we're about a month away, 24th of February will mark 4 years since this invasion first began. How would you view Putin's approach to this over these last number of years?
Well, I mean, he spent so many years building up a war chest for going into Ukraine, and to do just aggressive war making wherever he saw politically fit. You know, Russia's foreign policy has basically been, how can we put our thumb in the eye of the Americans wherever in the world? So whether it's Russia sort of trying to retain its sphere of influence in Georgia, keeping Armenia and Azerbaijan on puppet strings, whether it's an intervention in Syria, and then now it's Ukraine in 2014 and Ukraine now. A lot of this was to thumb its nose at America and to establish itself as a regional and international player. Of that war chest that Putin had accumulated, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about $150 billion U.S. In 2022. Well, Russia has now burned through about 76% of those cash reserves. Putin's approach to the war was, he thought it was going to be a short, limited war. And this is exactly how you get yourself into trouble in warfare. If you go in thinking it's going to be a short affair, it's probably going to be long. And that is exactly what it's turned into. The Russian economy, it was supposed to be the pillar that Russia could pretty much rely on, and no matter what was going to happen, the economy was going to be there, bolstered by oil revenues, bolstered by oil production and oil byproducts and their exports. That can work in peacetime, but Russia is somewhere in the neighborhood of one of the most sanctioned countries in the world right now. It has somewhere in the neighborhood of 26,000 independent sanctions slapped on it. From 2022, let's say, to about 2024, early 2025, real economic growth in Russia. And I'm not just talking about GDP numbers that are coming from the ministry, that they're very much fudged numbers, but real economic growth in Russia in the first few years of the war, it's actually negative 1.5%. And at the same time, Russia is now dealing with an 8% inflation rate and a 16% overnight borrowing rate. The combined efforts and the combined weight of the sanctions regime, of a poorly managed economy, of all the problems of an authoritarian being your leader, and the sort of the negative economic pressures that can exert on your society, they're all starting to come to a head. So Putin he went in thinking it was going to be a short affair, but he was not prepared for this long, protracted war. And it's really become less of a race to see who can get the most arms to Russia or to Ukraine. I'll recall that North Korea and Iran, they sent arms to Russia, and the rest of the world, largely NATO-aligned countries, they've donated immense amount of material to Ukraine. It's no longer a moment of how much equipment can we get to this conflict. It's a defense industrial transformation race. That this is about who can innovate the fastest, who can manufacture the most amount of material, who can manufacture field systems that are proven better, and how can you get those to the front. So it's less about depleting your stockpiles that are already getting depleted, and it's more about how can you re-up those stockpiles, because they are, in the world, they're starting to get down. Russia is certainly facing that with material shortages of armored vehicles, and as I've been saying for years now, but it's really, really starting to come to a head now.
You mentioned earlier, Andrew, Ukraine's resistance, almost surprising in the face of long odds, and yet here we are almost 4 years into this. And I know part of that strategy from Ukraine's side has been to target oil refineries, target ships, but how is Ukraine managing this steadfast resistance?
Well, I mean, this goes back to your reasons for fighting. There is something to be said about morale and your reason for fighting a war. I mean, you don't fight a war for the sake of fighting. All wars are fought for political ends. The political end that Russia is fighting for is just a terrible, aggressive war making. It's fairly easy to be morally repulsed by that, especially if you're the one being attacked. There are recruitment problems in Ukraine. Sure, I'm not going to pretend like there aren't. Going to war and going into trench warfare especially, that's not a popular thing. Unfortunately, for many, it's a one-way ticket. There are ways of, Ukraine's been able to innovate a lot, though. Drone warfare, this has been the ultimate game changer in this conflict. I mean, you see the rise of drones with Azerbaijan and Armenia in 2020, if I remember correctly, when Azerbaijan took over Nagorno-Karabakh, wiping out Armenia's armor advantage with drones. Ukraine's just taken that and put it on steroids and on HGH at the same time, and the drone war has been prolific, to say the least. There's a revolution in warfare right now, and this is about a co-evaluation of tactics and tech. And the Ukrainians have just been innovating better. So they have more of the moral cause on their side. They have more of the technological cause on their side. They're willing to innovate. Russia is just not that willing to innovate. Ukraine is also led by, frankly, one of the most effective world leaders we've seen in the last number of decades. There is something to be said about the leadership of Vladimir Zelensky. He goes out there and he says the right things. He is able to stand up to any leader, Donald Trump or Merz or Macron or Starmer, anybody really. He will go out there and say what needs to be said, and he drums up support. To have genuine leadership, that's what it looks like. And there's something to be said about the powers of a true, genuine leader who's in it for the long haul.
It would be, I feel anyway, like it would be impossible to have a conversation about, Russia, Ukraine, and geopolitical affairs without touching on the United States and Venezuela, and perhaps even the United States and Greenland. I'm just up against the clock. Can you hang on a couple extra minutes longer this morning, Andrew?
You betcha.
Thank you very much. Andrew Basso is with us this morning. We always turn to Andrew at times like this for perspective. He is a professor of political science at Wilfrid Laurier University and a fellow at the Balsley School of International Affairs in Waterloo. We'll continue the conversation and get into something a little closer to home and Donald Trump's aspirations as we continue the Mike Farwell Show this morning. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We are in conversation this morning with Andrew Basso, a professor of political science at Wilfrid Laurier University, also a fellow at the Balsley School of International Affairs. Today, this January the 12th, marks 1,418 days since Russia invaded Ukraine. And that is the exact number of days the Soviet Union fought what they knew as the Great Patriotic War, what the rest of us knew as the Second World War. But 1,418 days in the Russia-Ukraine war is marked today. And I feel it would be impossible to talk about these geopolitical affairs without also discussing, to some extent anyway, and I don't want to draw too direct a line here between the two, but certainly what the United States has done in Venezuela at least bears some conversation here this morning. What started off as attacks on so-called drug boats has led to the capture and imprisonment of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Andrew, what do you make of the United States' aggressiveness in this regard?
I mean, this is all very much related. It's all about shifting of great power politics. Trump, in my mind, he sees the world as him having a hemisphere, and he has the American hemisphere, and Putin, he has his own European/Asiatic hemisphere, and then China has another, its own hemisphere. It's not too far off of what was planned by the post-war planners in the 1940s, that the reason why you have 5 members of the Security Council, the U.S., permanent members of the Security Council, the U.S., the U.K., France, what was the Soviet Union, now Russia, and China, is that they were supposed to be the 5 policemen of the world, and they were supposed to police their own regions. That just changed immensely right away with the Cold War, and then that changed immensely when the Americans became the sole hyperpower in the world. But Trump has his own little version of the Monroe Doctrine, that he wants to have the Americas as his territory. I will say this, that the raid on Venezuela, it doesn't happen without what's happening in Ukraine. Venezuela is a key Russian ally in the Americas, and maybe no longer. Although I would caution everyone to, if you're happy about the arrest of Maduro, I would caution listeners to say it's not so easy to stop an entire political movement or an alliance by just taking out one person and arresting them. Now we're getting into the real politics of intervention. You can't just go in and take out the figureheads and say everything is okay. In the short term, it looks like a quick little victory, but it could turn out to be somewhat meaningless because it misses the broader implications of global power as well as domestic policy. Good luck governing another country. That's a really difficult thing to do, and for some of us of a particular vintage, we'll remember the invasion of Iraq in 2003. We'll remember Afghanistan in 2001, and those countries you're still recovering, or one of them has very much failed and reverted back to the governance from before. So it's all tied to Ukraine in a sense, because the Americans, they've been able to see what the Ukrainians have done with Russian air defense systems, and those are the same air defense systems that the Venezuelans used, the S-300. The Americans, pretty famously, they lost nobody on this raid, and they shut down Venezuela's air defenses. You don't get to that point unless you take the transferable knowledge from that conflict in Ukraine with you. It's going to be an interesting moment in international affairs here. Does a nation have a right to just go in and arrest the leader of another sovereign country or not? Are we witnessing the total explosion of the rules-based international system? Maybe, maybe not. Are we witnessing its slow erosion, however? Yeah, that's probably more like it. It's a slow erosion of seeing countries as fully sovereign. And we could be seeing a revival of these regional interventions, sort of in the style of the 1980s, the U.S. and Panama, Grenada, and elsewhere. If we do, that means we are essentially opening up Pandora's box yet again, and everybody is free to get in everybody else's business domestically. That's a dangerous, very slippery slope. And I know you want to talk about Greenland, so I will shoot it over to you.
I just thought that very thing when you mentioned, getting involved in everybody else's business. Does that include, what do you make of the overtures towards Greenland?
I mean, what could anybody make? What do we know? I will say that, there are about 55, maybe 60,000 Greenlanders. Some of them want to remain totally loyal to Denmark. Some of them want to become a sovereign country. Very few of them necessarily want to join the United States or be taken by the United States. First and foremost, I'm very much a scholar of human rights, and one of the fundamental rights that exists internationally is the right to self-determination. And you get to choose who you're associated with. You get to choose if you're an independent country. So the idea of just going in and aggressively taking over another country, I'm sure you can probably surmise what I'm about to say, given the last number of years of me coming on your show. It's very much a bad idea, given Russia and Ukraine, given everything else. So, there are overtures towards Greenland here, and I think there are two real big pillars with all of this. It's about Greenland's minerals, and it's about its resources, and it's about the security that America perceives it needs. There's an irony with trying to create more security, that by creating more security for yourself, you actually create more insecurity in the global system. It's a paradox that's existed, since the time of Thucydides and the Peloponnesian War. So if the Americans truly believe that they need Greenland for their own security, that will cause more insecurity in the world. AKA, it could mean an absolute fragmentation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO is essentially dead if the United States goes in. It goes in and militarily takes over Greenland. If, however, let's say Greenlanders do truly freely vote to become a part of the United States, then I suppose that's their right, and then the international community should respect that, so long as an election isn't necessarily rigged. Time will tell, but this is all very much connected. And whether it's Ukraine or Venezuela or Syria or Greenland, it is all about a central question that is emerging again, and it is, what are the legitimate uses of force in the international system? Previously, we were all bound by international law, and we were bound by a rules-based system. Now it turns out that there are these leaders out there that rules are more like guidelines, and maybe we are just going to do as we see fit. So time will tell what the international system morphs into, but it's going to be pretty telling in the next few months.
I'm so glad we could get your perspective on these world events again on the show. As always, Andrew, thanks for your time, and I look forward to the next conversation.
Anytime. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Andrew Basso is a professor of political science at Wilfrid Laurier University and a fellow at the Balsley School of International Affairs. When things go haywire in other parts of the world, Andrew is our go-to guy. An update from the 570 News Center, and then it's Monday. How about some music history? This week in music history, coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is Monday morning. It is just after the 11 a.m. update, and that means it's time for This Week in Music History. Full disclosure, I will never mislead you. Brian Allison, our resident musicologist who joins us for this segment every week, sends me a list of music suggestions to start the show. And of course, it will tie in, so the Kingsmen's Louie Louie will tie into one of the stories we discussed this week on This Week in Music History. But it was irresistible for me to pick that song from the three choices that Brian Allison gave me, because it takes me back more than 30 years to a first-year class I had at Conestoga College in the Broadcasting, Radio, and Television program, or BRT, as we called it. Yes, we were brats, but the class... And I'm feeling awful for forgetting this teacher's name. I want to say it was Bob. So I can still see him, and I can definitely still see the classroom. It was a pop culture class, and it was dimly lit. There were lava lamps, and if that instructor didn't smoke a big fat doobie before the class, I'd be disappointed in my later years thinking back on it. If any of my fellow BRTers happen to be listening this morning and remember that pop culture prof from Conestoga back like in the early to mid 1990s, help me out on this one. Nonetheless, Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, I remember him teaching us about it. I'm so excited to share this story with you today on This Week in Music History, and so much more. And finally now, I'll let Brian Allison into the conversation. Sorry, Brian, tangent this morning.
That's a beautiful tangent. I love it.
You know, too, just by the description, the dimly lit room, the lava lamps, the guy dressed kind of funky, like he was smoking up before he sat down with us students.
Yeah, he was relaxed.
Yeah, exactly. That's all that matters. Brian is not only our good friend and musicologist who joins us for This Week in Music History every week at this time, but he's got a Facebook page of the same name that I encourage you to follow along with, because you'll get these tidbits and more. Look up This Week in Music History on Facebook. And let's start, Brian, with, I might call them my second favorite band of all time. I'm not really sure, but I know they were hugely influential on my absolute favorite band of all time, that being Led Zeppelin. And it was, in fact, this day in 1969 that they were making news.
We're going way back to even before we were born.
Yes.
Yeah. January 12th, 69. This is the date that the mighty Led Zeppelin released their self-titled debut album. So this was kind of a real eye-opener for a lot of folks in music. Zeppelin came out with this mix of blues covers and hard-rocking songs, and it really resonated, especially in England initially. It influenced countless other bands. And, of course, Led Zeppelin would come on to become one of the greatest rock and roll bands in the world. The album was recorded in 30 hours, which is pretty impressive when you go back and listen to it. Most of it off the floor, not a lot of overdubs. And it cost just £1,800, which would be about $3,400 then, equivalent to about $30,000 today. So, that's pretty shoestring budget, even for an album, back in the day. And today it would be incredibly cheap to be able to record a record for $30,000. So, they were originally called the New Yardbirds because they had been an offshoot of another legendary blues rock band that was called the Yardbirds, of course. And the group changed their name because the Yardbirds didn't want them calling themselves the New Yardbirds. They were still going to go on in some form, so they just landed on Led Zeppelin, which jokingly referred to the band's chances of success. The story goes that it was Keith Moon, actually, that had said when Jimmy Page told him about his band, and who was going to be in it, that, that'll probably go over like a Led Zeppelin. So that's how the band arrived at the name. But yeah, it did great. It landed at number 6 and top 10 in the U.S. and Australia and Spain and worldwide. It did very, very well, launched Led Zeppelin's career. Some trivia about it. They initially did not give songwriting credits to a number of artists. So Willie Dixon, who wrote You Shook Me and I Can't Quit You Baby from the debut album, or Jake Holmes, who was a co-writer on Dazed and Confused. And that would spark some legal action later years where Led Zeppelin were going to have to pay some royalties for. Credit they did not give out.
I have the Zeppelin box set at home, and this is just a reminder to get back into it, because every time I hear Zeppelin, either something that is better known or a deeper cut, I'm reminded of how strong they were as musicians. Just a fantastic band.
Incredible band. And like you said, they did influence a lot of bands. I know you're a big Rush fan. They had a major influence on the guys from Rush. In fact, when Rush first started hitting the airwaves with Working Man, a lot of people thought that it was actually a Led Zeppelin single because they sounded a bit like them. So, yeah, lots of influence there.
They were calling that Cleveland radio station that played Working Man, hey, play that new Zeppelin song again. Oh, no, not Zeppelin. That's our friends from Canada,
Band from Canada. Give them credit.
All right, Zeppelin before our time, just a wee bit, Brian, in 1969. But when we were but a year or two old, and I loved this song, I still do to this day, we were graced with American Pie from Don McLean.
Yeah, what a treasure and what a song. So, yeah, it was January 15, 1972, where Don McLean's folk rock ballad, American Pie, began a 4-week run at the top of the charts. And, the song, I think everybody is aware, it talks about the plane crash that killed Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper, and called it The Day the Music Died. And, this was really the biggest hit that Don McLean would ever have. The lyrics have been now analyzed ad nauseum over half a century with, Don McLean still continuing to say he's going to leave the lyrics open for interpretation. He's never really disclosed, but many fans still feel the song is like a literal historic timeline with references to a bunch of characters. He talks about the jester, who people think is Bob Dylan, the king, who obviously would be Elvis Presley, Jack Flash is supposed to be Mick Jagger, and the girl who sang the blues being Janis Joplin. So lots of things that were part of that song that people are still talking about today. Some interesting trivia. In 2015, Don McLean's original handwritten lyric to American Pie sold at auction for a whopping $1.2 million. The most expensive song manuscript ever sold. And it had numerous lyric revisions on it and crossed out verses. And, pretty impressive. An 8-minute, 36-second long song. Back in your day as a DJ, it might have been called a bathroom break song.
It's funny. I was actually going to share that because I got to play it the very first radio station I worked at, and absolutely what it was. You needed some of those. Back in the day, we had to manually play every song. We didn't have a computer playing it for us.
That's right. And you needed to have a bathroom break and get a coffee. So an 8-minute and 36-second song was probably great.
Plenty of time to get down the hallway to do both of those things at the little radio station in Salmon Arm. That is an absolutely true story. Okay, let's stay in the 1970s for one more here. And it was this week in 1978 that pearl clutchers everywhere breathed a sigh of relief because those nasty Sex Pistols were done with.
They were finished. Yeah, they had so on January 14th, 78, they played their final show together at the Winterland Ballroom in San Francisco. So they had just completed a disastrous tour of North America, which was really self-imposed. Manager Malcolm McLaren didn't want them playing sort of in the north of North America. He felt, let's go to the deep south. Go where you're not wanted, there's more to achieve, was his sort of credo. So they played all these dive bars in the south where they were basically had hamburgers and beer cans thrown at them for an hour and a half. Sid Vicious was in the throes of a heroin addiction, played most of the shows with his bass guitar unplugged. Ahead of the encore, Johnny Rod announced his displeasure with the band and taunted the audience with his now famous phrase where he said, "Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?" After the band played a very abbreviated set, they left the stage abruptly. And that was it. That was the Sex Pistols were done. They didn't perform again together in that incarnation. They did reform in 1976 for a tour with original bass player Glenn Maddock on the bass, but of course Sid died, and that was the end of the Sex Pistols. They went out in quite a fizzle.
Brian Allison joins us every Monday morning at 11 a.m. for a look back at this week in music history. Don't forget his Facebook page of the same name. Just search This Week in Music History on Facebook and follow along for these stories and more. We'll take a quick time out. When we come back, what song was it that prompted an investigation from the FBI? And which music artist, in fairness, they're a pretty big deal, has been the subject of more songs than any other artist in history? We'll get you those stories and more as we continue This Week in Music History this morning on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I knew that you would come through for me, and it's my buddy Russ, a fellow BRTer, took the broadcasting program at Conestoga College. Russ is a little younger than me, so a little after me, but remembers Bob Pritchard. Hey, I got the first name right. That guy that taught the class, and was it the history of popular music? But Russell in his email says, Bob Pritchard, music class. That's the class I remember, with the dim lighting, the lava lamps, and where I first learned more about the Kingsmen and Louie Louie, which is the song that we chose to start the show today, This Week in Music History. Brian Allison is with us every Monday morning at this time. He's a musicologist and has a Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History. So, Brian, let's go back to this week in 1964 and the number one hit, Louie Louie. If only it were that simple.
Well, the Kingsmen, they just got lucky with this hit. And it became sort of a garage rock standard where, any band that was just sort of learning to play instruments and a startup band, everybody played Louie Louie. I mean, it was just such a great song. So it was originally recorded in 1955 by Richard Berry. The song was based on the tune El Loco Cha-Cha, about a, quote, lovesick sailor's lament to a bartender about his wanting to get back home to his girl. Pretty simple principle for a song. But achieving number one status for this band was a pretty big win because the lyrics to the song were very, very questionable. Radio DJs thought they could hear all kinds of profanity and lewd things in the lyrics of the song. And eventually, it made its way to the FBI, who investigated the lyrics to Louie Louie after Christian groups and DJs complained that the lyrics were pornographic. And they actually did an exhaustive study by committee. They played the song hundreds of times at different speeds to try to decipher what the actual lyrics were, and concluded that the lyrics were too difficult to decipher and were open to interpretation, both false and correct. So there you go. They rose above the FBI's investigation and had a number one hit for 4 weeks in 1964.
Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Okay.
And why do you think that song sounded so muddy? What do you think the reason might have been?
I don't think they were actually singing words, Brian.
Well, they were singing words, but I think it's more a matter of how the record was made. So, first of all, it was recorded in a very small room using one basic microphone that was mounted on the ceiling of the room. So the band played live, and they had to get the song in one take. You can actually, if you listen closely, you can actually hear drummer Lynn Easton drop an F-bomb after fumbling a drumstick at 0:54 on the recording. If you listen real closely, you can actually still hear that. Somehow the FBI didn't catch that one. But the lead singer, he was a guy named Jack Eli. He had to stand in the center of the room, surrounded by the musicians playing at top volume, and basically yell the lyrics into this microphone that was mounted on the ceiling. And then to add difficulty to his duty, Jack Eli was wearing orthodontic braces, which he had just had tightened that day. So he had a sore mouth, so he tended to slur the lyrics a little bit. So all of this allegedly added to the murky sound of the song.
The legend lives on decades, more than 60 years later. I love it. All right, this week in 1988, Brian, George Michael proved to us that he didn't need Wham.
He sure didn't. Wow. What an album. So, yeah, this is the week that he went to number one on the U.S. album charts with his debut solo album, Faith. It stayed on the charts for 51 non-consecutive weeks inside the Billboard Top 200 and 12 weeks at number one. Wow, that's pretty good for 1988. Was the first album by a white solo artist to hit number one on the Billboard Top Black albums as well, and spawned, of course, 4 huge hits, which were the title track Faith, Father Figure, One More Try, and Monkey. So he was the only British male artist to have 4 number one hits from one album on the Billboard Hot 100. And, you know, of course, there was the whole fashion of this record. So the Faith era of George Michael's career debuted his iconic leather jacket, the jeans with the strategic rips in them, boots, and the 5 o'clock shadow, which he became famous for. And that was a deliberate thing. He had sort of done that as a way to step away from Wham's teeny bopper image. And yeah, it would become a huge recognizable style and a big album in 1988. I actually saw the tour in 1988, if you can believe that, at the former CNE auditorium.
I can believe that. You're a musicologist. Of course you'd see that tour.
I did. You know what? I went with my now wife, who really wanted to see him live. And, you know, I must admit I wasn't super excited about seeing George Michael at the time. I was not a fan, but it's not a concert I probably would have paid to go to. But very impressive show. Great artist, incredible vocalist. And, yeah, he held the audience captive for a couple of hours. So glad I got to see him in his day.
All right. Before I free you from your duties today, musicologist Brian Allison, I mentioned this before the commercial break. The music artist, flat-out icon, there's no arguing that, I don't think, who has been the subject of more songs than any other artists. We learned the answer to this question this week in 2005.
Yeah, is this really a surprise to anybody, though?
I don't think so. I mean, that's why I deliberately teased it before the break. I'm sure... I would guess that most of our music-loving audience figured out who we're talking about here.
Yes, for sure. So they did basically an exhaustive study to show which musical artist himself is mentioned in more songs than any other artist. And, of course, it turned out to be the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. Nearly 1,000 songs include references to Elvis himself. And you can go down the line. They're all songs, you know, most of them we would know from our time. You've got Graceland by Paul Simon. You've got A Room at the Heartbreak by U2, Calling Elvis by Dire Straits. Loudon Wainwright III did a song called Happy Birthday Elvis. Kirsty MacColl, who we talked about on a previous show, she wrote a song called There's a Guy Works Down the Chip Shop, Swears He's Elvis. There was I Saw Elvis in a UFO by Ray Stevens. Frank Zappa recorded Elvis Has Left the Building. I remember Elvis Is Everywhere from, I think it was maybe 1987 by Mojo Nixon and Skid Roper. And then, of course, you got Black Velvet by Alana Miles right here in Canada. So, yeah, there's a good volume of songs that reference Elvis Presley, and rightfully so. That's why he's the king.
Absolutely. Mark Cohn's Walking in Memphis, one of my all-time favorites that would reference Elvis for sure.
Yep, Angel of Harlem, U2.
Oh, another good one, yeah.
Elvis references in it. There's a bunch, yeah. When you start reading the list, it's like, oh my God, I didn't really realize that there were that many songs about Elvis Presley, but yeah, they're out there.
There you go. Brian, another great trip down a musical memory lane. Thank you as always for the time.
You bet. Can't wait till next week.
Look forward to it. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Brian Allison is our good friend and musicologist who joins us every Monday morning at 11 for This Week in Music History. Of course, it was Elvis, about whom more songs have been written than any other musical artist, or at least he pops up as a reference in more than 1,000 songs from other artists. This Week in Music History, every Monday morning at 11 here on the show and on Facebook as well. Brian Allison operates a Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History, and you can follow along there. Please follow the page so that you get these tidbits and so much more every week. As we're on the subject of music, every Friday on this show is an all request Friday where we give you the opportunity to pick the music that you hear when we come back from commercial breaks and whatnot. We always put a theme on it. And I thought, you know, all this talk about dry January, those of us who enjoy the occasional tipple might be missing that drink or two. So we'll have one figuratively together on the show this Friday, okay? Your all request theme this week is drinking songs. As Nate said when he sent me an email with his request, you're going to have a country music show on Friday. Maybe I will, but the song that reminds you of or is related to or whatever, maybe it's just your favorite drinking song. You play with the theme however you want. This Friday's theme for All Request Friday is songs about booze. I'll leave the rest to use. Drop me an email with your request, mike@570news.com, or when you call in, just let Jen know. She's on the other side of the glass today. Tell her the song you would like to hear about booze. All Request Friday theme. This is the Mike Farwell Show. Drewe's Views with David Drewe is coming up on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Now that cat couldn't spell to win a bet, but he carried this battered notebook full of his poetry. More soul per square word than the Lord's Prayer. He was the kind of guy that called a spade a shovel, and a violin a fiddle, and a lady ma'am. And I don't even know why I think of him now. Maybe because he never told me a lie he'd have to apologize for later. Because he'd speak to a guy straight, eyeball to bloodshot eyeball, like he'd never even had a secret.
That is our good friend and artist Scott Wicken introducing David Drewe, even though he didn't know at the time of that performance that it would be used to introduce David Drewe.
But he does get a little kick out of it. When I see him, he's like, "Are you still using that?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Cool."
And we are still using that to introduce David Drewe, owner, negotiating change, government relations, stakeholder engagement strategies, and a deep history in political circles, including time spent on the staff of a local Conservative MP. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Speaking of federal politics, I was quite intrigued by the front page of my newspaper this morning that tells me that our top court is going to be revisiting former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's We Charity scandal. Revisiting, you say. I thought that we had gotten him officially now over 1 year ago out of our system. The former PM, that is.
To be fair, I think the best way to describe this is there's absolutely no new information coming forward, no new litigation. This would be the equivalent of the after the game, the officials going through the video footage and sort of thing. And while ostensibly the big deal is, did Justin Trudeau break criminal law? And that's what they're all about the Supreme Court in front of. I stopped caring about that a little while ago. So, moving on. This is really fascinating nonetheless, though, because what this is about is, well, the ethics commissioner or the ethics body that decided this, in theory, their decisions are not supposed to be challengeable by the courts. And so this is why it's going all the way to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court, which decided to hear this, decides that, no, there was some miscarriage here and therefore it merits being looked at, it probably won't automatically mean that Justin Trudeau is guilty of anything criminal. It will probably mean a process has to start with a more clear set of expectations and rules. But nonetheless, how many of these bodies are out there that are called basically administrative law? And it keeps stuff out of the courts, but it really does in some cases, like the Democracy Watch is alleging in this case, take away from transparency and accountability. So it could be that, and this is wild speculation, but this is why it gets kind of fascinating. It could be that the Supreme Court rules that, yes, the conflict of interest commissioner erred, and this should be challengeable, and they start the process again, and Justin Trudeau is still not found guilty of anything criminal. But for the next 50 years, the Supreme Court precedent will have set that these tribunals, these administrative law bodies, can be challenged in the courts. And that is a legacy that is kind of huger than drinking water on reserves, I will honestly say.
I find it so interesting that what we're talking about here, and you alluded to it, I mean, we're talking about the Supreme Court, which may or may not, end up being some illusion or allegation of criminality here, that's a pretty far cry from conflict of interest while in office. Thank you very much.
Well, conflict of interest is a very vague sort of thing. And I don't like how the law defines it, because to me, a conflict of interest is where anybody looks at it and goes, this doesn't quite pass the smell test, whether or not I have done anything wrong. You know, like if all of a sudden I'm sitting here talking about what a great business negotiating change is, every second reference on the radio, is that a conflict of interest? Well, but when you actually do something that violates that conflict of interest, that's a breach of trust. And I do not quite get, you need a lawyer to get to what the difference is between a criminal conflict of interest and a breach of trust, because we're now getting right into the legal as opposed to what I think you, me, and the listeners would commonly understand to be. But generally a conflict of interest is just somebody looking out there and could go, well, wait a minute, you're on student council, but you're also a member of the band? And doesn't the band fund the student council? And that is a conflict of interest, perhaps. Now, if you don't vote on it, if you recuse yourself from the the conversations, yeah, you have a conflict of interest, but you've managed it appropriately. So I'm thinking there's something in the conflict of interest here that perhaps Democracy Watch feels, crossed that line and the previous group erred. But the issue before the Supreme Court is, do we even look at this really? Or was the final decision made by, because the previous court did not rule that Justin Trudeau went X, Y, or Z. They just ruled that no, the ethics commissioner's decision was final.
I just don't know why the Supreme Court of Canada wants to interfere with Justin Trudeau's romancing of Katy Perry. Like, why? Come on, just let the guy be, would you?
Honestly, this is so procedural that while Justin Trudeau might get tied up again, if this does go back down, the actual issue before the courts, I'd be surprised if he even has a lawyer paying attention.
I was being sarcastic, by the way.
Oh,
let them interfere with the romance all they want.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to make sure,
Of course.
Justin Trudeau I'm not alleging anything criminal on his behalf. He's a million miles from this. Like I said, he probably doesn't even have a lawyer paying attention. I am not besmirching him in any way, but I really do find it fascinating that 50 years from now, the Trudeau precedent.
Oh, there's a Trudeau precedent, all right.
But no, legally in Supreme Court, like when they say the Trudeau decision or R versus Trudeau precedent.
All right. I want you to role play with me a little bit here this morning and pretend that you are Ontario NDP leader Marit Stiles. Who do you not, Ms. Stiles, want to be the next leader of the federal NDP?
I was thinking about this because I read this article that basically said it's a lot more of a three-horse race than anybody ever expected it to be. They thought it was going to be a runaway race for the incumbent MP, Heather McPherson. I always thought it was going to be a two-horse race between her and Avi Lewis, but apparently, I can't remember his name now and I feel so bad about it. The working boots union man.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of too.
Just got endorsed by the steel workers, and they are actively working for him, drawing memberships and fundraising. So he's actually a heck of a lot more credible than any of us would have thought. Thank you for Googling.
Don't give away my secrets.
But while you're looking at this, it's like, well, David Eby, is he going to be endorsing anybody? Naheed Nenshi, is he going to be endorsing anybody? Marit Stiles, is she going to be endorsing anybody? And I really don't think so.
Rob Ashton would be the fellow wearing the boots.
Rob Ashton, thank you.
You're welcome.
No relation to Nikki Ashton.
Correct.
Yes. No, but if you pay attention to politics and you know Nikki Ashton and you thought they were related, that would be a stake against this guy. So the fact that he's not related, people should know that so they can keep an open mind that he's... But I can tell you who I would not want if I was any of these premiers. I would not want Avi Lewis.
Why is that?
Because he would be the most likely to be chastising the fellow NDP premiers whenever they agreed with the government on anything, whenever they had to make hard governing decisions. He's the self-righteous. Yeah, okay, I'll go with that. He is the judgmental purist. And he's the one who wants nationalized grocery stores. If you are the premier of Alberta or the leader of the opposition hoping to run Alberta, you don't want the federal leader of the NDP saying your platform's weak. And he's the kind of guy who would do that. He is a purist. He's a movement NDPer. He's not a party person. He's dallied around in ridings where he's never won. And I do not say that as a diss on him. He has picked hard ridings that you would never have put money on him winning. So respect to him for doing that. But he's never tried to work the party back rooms. He's never advanced himself within any way at all. He is really the person who is coming in from the environmental movement, from the labor movement, from the movements, not the organized, but the idealists. So I would not want to be anybody who has to do anything practical as a New Democrat with him as federal leader.
Okay. Before we take the break, you've got me curious because I love the local connection to the Rim Park debacle, which will soon, how many more years? 3, 4? Will be off the books in Waterloo. But you point out, even with that, at least we're not Montreal. What kind of mess is Montreal's books in?
Well, the Olympic Stadium.
I love Olympic Stadium.
They are still paying debt on it.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I'm just looking for the story. But yeah, they are still paying for the debt on it, and they are still going through the fundamental repairs that were caused from initial failures.
Oh my gosh. So this is a cautionary tale for Milan, really. Like Olympic hosting the Olympic Games, I believe with the exception of Calgary in 1988, is a losing proposition across the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, it's starting 2026 the same way it began 1976. Under construction and without a roof.
50 years later.
So yeah, we had this issue with Rim Park. We did muck up the financing, and I'm saying the collective we because, I was a citizen of Waterloo at the time. I was a taxpayer. I wasn't scrutinizing anything. Neither was City Council at the time, apparently. But no, this was a bit of complex math, and if I'd have been in council at the time, I would have been leaning on the staff professionals to do their jobs. But, at the end of it, we got a great facility. It is great.
And still is. Yes. Absolutely.
Now, Montreal, on the other hand, you know what I mean? Stuck in the morass on it much, much longer. It's never actually quite been fully functional in a way that they weren't worried about something or another. How many years ago was it that they had to shut it down because pieces of concrete were falling from the roof? We're not half bad. We did okay.
All right. By comparison to a real disaster, Rim Park, this is nothing.
Well, especially let's put Rim Park in perspective because apparently the debt we're planning to take on as the city of Waterloo is going to blow away what we spent on Rim Park in the next couple of years.
What debt are we planning to take on?
It was in the Jeff Utit story in the record. We were talking about it during the break last week, and I was saying I loved the data wrapper chart in the middle, and I thought he went to school just to learn data wrapper for a job. But yeah, the chart in there, it sort of shows you, hey, after we pay off Rim Park, we're planning a giant expansion of debt in the city of Waterloo.
There should be less debt because you're not paying off Rim Park anymore. Doesn't anybody? That's how finances work, David.
I think they've already respent it 4 times.
All right.
Or I shouldn't say that because that makes it sound like they are not doing this fully aware. They are fully aware of what they are doing. I was not in the room, so I do not want to. But yeah, that really raises my hackles. Take a look at that again.
I will.
Data wrapper.
David Drewe joins us Monday mornings at 11:30 to share Drewe's views. American intervention in Iran, you say, and attendance at the upcoming World Cup in Toronto. We'll get into those conversations as we continue this morning on the Mike Farwell Show. It's Drew's Views on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just getting back to David Drew's point on Waterloo debt post Rim Park. As of this year, 2026, other debt beyond Rim Park debt is $7.5 million. It will more than double by 2032. Other debt existing and recommended after Rim Park is paid off from 7.5 in 2026 to 15.2 million in debt in Waterloo in 2032. Thank you for enlightening us on that.
It's not like it's in the billions, so we don't need to pay attention.
Stop it, David. Stop it. I had a great-grandmother that talked about minding the pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves. I know we don't have pennies anymore, but at least we can mind the nickels.
Thank you, Jim Flaherty.
Yes, Jim Flaherty indeed. Okay, American intervention in Iran right now. You say this would be hypocritical and counterproductive.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of funny because I tangented off on this a bit last week talking about Venezuela, and I used the example of my Iranian friends. And there's people who really, really want regime change, and there's people who really, really want Iran to sort out for Iran, and they're no fans of the regime. Right now, you have a real powder keg going on in Iran. But what we need to understand about Iran is it's a lot more complex culture than the good guys and the bad guys. There are good and bad on both sides of all of this. There is horrible things going on. But if a bunch of white North Americans or Northern Europeans start going in there with bombs, planes, or setting rules, we're going back to the situation that set up the Shah for failure. Iran kind of needs to sort out what is going to happen in Iran's future if we are not going to end up in another situation of the worst case scenario being broken up fiefdoms with massive instability in the region where nobody knows what's going on. The best case scenario is 10 years of peace and then another massive upheaval when the American imposed dictatorship is thrown out. We really just need to give them space to deal with their issues internally. And by the way, when I say hypocritical, weren't we just talking about the Monroe Doctrine and the Trump corollary or the Don Roe Doctrine? I'm sorry. Where in this hemisphere is Iran?
That's a very... geography is not my strong suit, but I will say nowhere.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think you could have this argument whether it's in Europe or in Asia, and people could pull out maps and have good arguments at a bar about it, but it's definitely not in North or South America, I would wager. And just given this whole, we got to stick with our knitting and you stick with yours, I'm not sure what happens to... He and Trump intercepted a Venezuelan tanker that was being escorted by a Russian sub. And there's this part of me that still feels like, oh yeah, that was a little bit of dancey dance between the future dictators as they were cutting up the spoils. But if all of a sudden Trump does start getting involved in Iran, I do not picture Russia being so cool with whatever goes on in Venezuela and in South America anymore. So, yeah, there's a whole lot of reasons why we do not want NATO, I will even say, but no one else from NATO is talking about going in. No one else from NATO dealing with this. Now, if we can provide support to Middle Eastern countries who will come in and help settle this, Muslim to Muslim, absolutely great. Shia to Shia, Sunni to Sunni. There are Christians in Iran still. Most of them have left, but, dealing with the Kurds and finding a way for peace and compromise. But we don't need none of us in the room. And we definitely don't need no missiles pretending to solve the problem and establish a government.
Missiles? We don't need no stinking missiles. All right. World Cup. The big football tourney. Footy. Coming to Toronto this summer. I mean, things are not great between Canada and the U.S. People said that might have been part of the reason that attendance at the World Junior Hockey Championships was low in Minnesota because people didn't want to travel from Canada south. What do you think is going to happen at the World Cup?
Well, I do think attendance is going to be changing. I do not picture a lot of... But where it's really, really different, though, is, I'm going to sound snobby, the class of people. The World Cup tickets for soccer are so much harder to get, so much more expensive, so much more prestigious. The boxes for these things. So, the big block of tickets that Visa Canada buys or gives, all these big companies giving away, that's not really going to change. But yeah, in terms of the cheap seats, I really do picture there being a lot of Canadians who do not, there's a lot of Mexicans too, who do not want to cross the border for those American sides of things. And in Toronto, I don't picture it being an issue. I think the border states are still going to be wanting to flow into Toronto. but vice versa.
Well, it's because, America's carrying the big stick here. Arr, arr, arr.
I mean, I don't want to get shot.
I can't.
No, but seriously, I don't want to get shot.
That's a fair point, actually.
And it's, I'm going to be so skeptical right now, pessimistic, but I'm fairly white looking.
I would describe you as such, yes.
So, generally I'm going to have a better shot with law enforcement down there than your average American who might not be white.
Oh, like Renee Good?
Yeah. Well, no, she should not have been shot, but she was. I don't want to get there.
Okay.
But chances are for a crowd like the World Cup, it's going to be diverse. And I could easily be in the background when one of those Yahoo ICE agents just starts deciding that somebody looks too Mexican for their taste.
All right, we'll leave it on that note.
On that happy note.
We might still be on the air after the noon update. I'm not sure. Love having you here, David. Thanks very much for coming in. You're fine. I just had to tease you.
I'm sorry. I thought I swore for a second.
No, not at all. So if somebody looks too Mexican for ICE's good, liking, that's the end of that. We'll see you next week.
That's the end of them.
Also true. David Drewe joins us Monday mornings at 11:30 for Drew's Views. Rant or Rave is coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage out of sight, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
And thus begins your daily Talkback Hour, where you get the chance to weigh in on the issues of the day or something you'd like to make the issue of the day. And on Mondays, in keeping with tradition here on the show, it is your rant or rave edition of Talkback. So you rant because you're upset about something. You rave because you're not at all upset, even in the throes of this stinky, rotten, terrible winter. Sorry, that was my inside voice coming out. Phone lines are open to you. We love taking your calls. And we'll start with Jersey Bill. Good afternoon, Billy.
So let me get this straight. You're against all winter sports, including the one that pays part of your salary? I can't believe that.
Thanks for putting it that way. No, of course not, Billy. I love everything about this dreaded season.
Okay, and I called because I was going to mention this before, but you brought it up early in the show about how the Riley and the other person was, I name I forget. You were all for these guys now at their Kitchener Rangers, and you realize it's a developmental league, and they're probably going through a lot of stress leaving a team they worked for a long time and coming to the Rangers, and they still performed really admirably, super admirably. And I also had to laugh about how you're cheering on Mr. Cowan there, who was one of your least favorite players when he was a Londonite, but now he's wearing the blue and white, and you're all for him. It's funny how sports works that way.
I want to be clear about something here, Billy. I was never against, look, there's a rivalry between Kitchener and London, absolutely. And I'll be very blunt. Do I like the city of London? No. I think the city, it's quite awful, quite frankly, not just to drive around in, but and I've had issues before with the staff at the arena there. They make our lives very difficult when we try to do our jobs by squeegeeing slush off the ice onto our shoes and such and sweeping popcorn onto our heads. It's uncalled for behavior, but I have absolutely nothing against the players personally at all. Even Easton Cowan, did he play for the arch rival London Knights? Yes. That doesn't mean that I don't like him as a person. I don't know him as a person. So anyway, whatever. And he plays for the Leafs now. Good for him.
I just want to make one other point, and it's a more serious note. It seems that, and especially with this second government-oriented video that came out about the incident in Minnesota, is that essentially the woman was killed because her partner was taunting. Essentially, that's what raised the threshold of the situation, and it just sort of struck me. And I don't mean to be facetious about this, but if taunting was a capital offense, my goodness, the ice hockey arena would be a lot more violent than it is today.
Billy, that is an excellent point as well. Taunting is part of the game. And again, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but since Billy brought it up, I will go back to the point I made this morning and also remind you, like we'll use Easton Cowan as an example. The London Knights made a big, hairy deal out of a regular season point streak that Easton Cowan had put together. Regular season, it got interrupted in the playoffs, but in regular season games, from one season into the next, Easton Cowan had points in, 50-plus games in the Ontario Hockey League. I thought one of the games in which he was awarded a point, it was not an actual point for Easton Cowan. But that was it. I just saw the play differently than the official scorekeepers did, and I said so because I speak my mind on this show and on hockey broadcasts and on the OHL podcast, and that's that. It's just that simple. I didn't say that anybody was a terrible person or a terrible player. I just said I saw the play this way, and I disagree with the official scorekeepers, which should be something that I'm allowed to say. And it just turned into a whole big mess. But please never misunderstand. I don't dislike these people as human beings. I don't know them as human beings at all. But what I did learn a little bit of, and this is just a wee bit of, because I saw the social media post from Sam O'Reilly, one of the new Kitchener Rangers. And I didn't get a chance to talk with Sam this weekend. I did get a chance to talk with Jared Woolley, a fine young man. One of the two players, O'Reilly and Woolley, came over from the London Knights. I didn't get a chance to talk to Sam, but I saw this post, and it had all these pictures of him with his old buddies in London, and he was thanking London, the city, his teammates, the Knights, for the memories, for the times. And it just made me realize this is a 19-year-old kid. No disrespect, Sam. I just think of myself as a 19-year-old kid and what kind of upheaval has just come into his life, right? Not only are you leaving your home at 16 to join this new community and this new team, but then that team, that becomes your place. It's like moving schools when you're a kid, moving neighborhoods away from the friends that you've made. Imagine how these young men feel. So I just said earlier today, and I will again now, let's make sure we are as patient and welcoming with them as we can be, because I cannot even imagine what that transition is like for these young men coming to a new city to play for a new team, which just so happens to be the arch rival of your previous team. That's got to be a wee bit awkward. So the more we can make it smoother, then the better for all of us. But please don't misunderstand the rivalry. I do not like the City of London. And frankly, bluntly again, I do not see eye to eye with a member of London's media. And that's it. That's all. It's got nothing to do with the players or the organization generally. Enough of that. I want to hear from you. Conservative Charlie is with us on Rant or Rave. I wonder what you've got on your mind today, Charlie.
Good morning, Mike.
Hi.
I'm not really sure if this is a rant or a rave. More of a public service announcement. You know, this morning when you had that dilemma about that red bow on your door?
Oh, yes. Yes, I did. Yep.
I'm actually a little disappointed in you, Mike.
Why is that?
I figured your door would be full of black and gold streamers and ribbons and maybe even a paint job on there. And maybe even a sweater with the number 12 on it, you know.
Terry Bradshaw.
That future Hall of Famer from Chico, California, Mike. I think that could have been appropriate. But, Mike, what do you say to those young legions and legions and legions of young Pittsburgh fans that you have jumped off the bandwagon, Mike? What do you say to those young kids?
Charlie, I have not jumped off the bandwagon. I'm not. I'm still a fan.
Well,
I'm just not investing any time this year.
It doesn't come across that way, Mike.
All right, Charlie. Fair point. You can absolutely take that perspective. Just like I said a moment ago, I saw play in hockey one way. The official scorer saw it another way. Big deal. I am still a fan. So to the young fans of the Pittsburgh Steelers or any other sports team, be loyal. In fact, I would extend that into your life in general. Be loyal. I think loyalty is important. I think loyalty is kind of going the way of the dodo. You know, I'm going to be with this company 19 years this summer. Now, they've shown some loyalty to me in all that time, I'll grant you. But anyway, be loyal. I have not stopped cheering. I have not stopped. I am still a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I decided that this year I would no longer invest time in them because I don't like their new quarterback. Their new quarterback is, I don't think, a very good human. Every time something goes wrong on the field, it seems to be somebody else's fault. Anyway, I was annoyed by it. I didn't support the signing in the first place. The team didn't ask me. So I just said, I'm out. And apparently the Pittsburgh Steelers won their division this year. It's great. I still love the team. You heard conservative Charlie mention a number 12 quarterback's jersey. There's only one TB12. Terry Bradshaw. Best there ever was. Love that guy. Anyway, the Steelers are playing a playoff game tonight. I might watch a little bit. How could I not? But I'm not decorating my studio door. Kids, be loyal. That's it. Kyle, good afternoon, rant or rave.
I guess it's a bit of a rant because you guys were talking about the World Cup. We actually passed on our tickets. I wouldn't say we got tickets yet, but we got the email that says that now you could put your money in if you want to be in the pool for the next round to get your tickets. And for me, that just seems kind of weird. Why would I want to put my hard-earned money down for something I'm not guaranteed? Like, I'm not guaranteed the tickets for the World Cup if I put in my first round of money. So if you kind of understand what I'm saying there, Mike, do you understand?
I'm sure you get a refund, though?
No.
What? So you're gonna,
no, seriously.
You pay like for a lottery?
It's exactly it.
Well, that's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. So we passed. We're like, I'm not going to go and waste my money and not guaranteed a seat or not guaranteed to watch the game. So the only guarantee I have now is I could just sit at home and crack open a couple of cold ones and not worry about anything and just pay my bill every month to get that cable, right? So
attaboy.
That's my rant. Thanks, buddy.
Okay, Kyle, appreciate it. Yeah, hey, keep paying for that cable package, okay? Because I assume that means you're with our friends with Rogers. And hey, that might keep me employed for another 19 years. Love to hear it. Robbie English, you're on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. How are we?
Well, I feel like it's Friday night all of a sudden, so I'm a little confused, to be honest.
Oh, that means, well, no, because I haven't got a belly full of poutine, so it's not a Friday. I can guarantee you that.
I usually hear from you on Rangers Talk. It's good to hear from you today.
I know. I jumped in the truck to run an errand, and you came up. So I got a rave and a rant. The rave is the Rangers at the moment. It's so exciting not as of Friday, because one of the guys played before, but yeah, amazing. Very exciting time to be a Rangers fan. Let's see what we can do the rest of the season. Still early days, couple more games for everyone to blend in and learn what each other is good at and what they do and how they do it. So that's my rave. My rant for the day, the only downside of this time of year, thank God hockey's there to save us, is the commercial 570 News plays for the boat show. It's the most annoying tune that gets stuck in my head like the greatest earworm ever, and I heard it the other day for the first time. So I can't wait for spring because we get the playoffs and they stop playing the boat show music. Thank you.
Thanks, Robbie. I appreciate it. Do you know what happens when that tune gets stuck in your head like that as an earworm? It means it's working, fella. And I will give kudos to the advertisers in that regard. I'm going to squeeze in one more before our first commercial break here during Rant or Rave, because all I see on my call screen is number 15. So if I look at my list of official Farwell's Force members, this better be Kim.
Kim? I thought I was 15, Mike.
Oh, dear. Here we go. This is Jeff. I can tell by the sound of your voice. Jeff, okay. We went through this the last time.
I know. You have to look it up and tell me before I'm done, because if you want to get me in before your first thing, I gotta first of all say Happy New Year to you and your family.
Thanks.
Because I haven't talked to you, and then I'll try changing my voice for you so I sound like him. But anyways, listen, I saw something on the TV there in the news, which I doing the what I do for a living. With the tow, they had the tow truck. They redid a tow truck, put all kinds of lights on it, put down, move over when we're on the side. Mike, maybe with some of your, you might have some connections there. I've talked to a Waterloo Regional back about 2 years ago, maybe a year ago. I talked to an OPP. Literally, I pulled over and talked to them because as a result, doing what I do for a living, I make sure, it doesn't matter if it's a little four-wheeler or a tow truck or a police officer just sitting there doing his report, I still move over into the middle lane.
That's the law, Jeff. Let's be clear about that. You are a transport truck driver. The law, it's the move over law.
Bingo.
Yes.
And But the thing is, Mike, I even do it in my personal vehicle.
Well, you should. It's a law for them too. It's a law for everybody. Yes,
and they're not doing it. They need to do a little bit of a blitz instead of maybe a seatbelt check, Mike. They need to do something because the other day I went to move over and this vehicle literally honked his horn and slammed his brakes on in front of me. Like, I know there's a bunch of truck drivers that listen on your channel, and I know tow trucks do the same thing. You got a good station here, Mike. But the thing is, man, people are getting a little better, but they're not. If you understand that little slogan. But, you know, buddy, that tow truck driver, unfortunately, the driver that went by and hit him, I have my own feelings on that, and I'm not going to state it on the air. But we all need to take people that are on the side, whether they're doing whatever they're doing, get over. That is the law, like you said, and the police need to start giving out tickets more, Mike.
All right.
Thank you
Jeff,
very much.
Wait. Oh. You are number 19.
Oh, 19. Okay.
Do
I
not
will write
forget.
That down.
You better write this down. All right, you knucklehead.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, all right.
See you later, man.
10-4, Rubber Ducky. I'm one man with a pen and a piece of paper. Lots of pieces of paper now. Look at all the pieces of paper we got here for Farwell's Force. I can't keep track of all of it. Well, I'm trying. Get your number. You remember your number. I'll try to write it down in the right spot. Together, we'll remember who we are on Farwell's Force. A force for good, a force for change, a force to be reckoned with. What's that? You're not yet a member? Would you like to be? Because we are always taking on new members of this force for good, change, and to be reckoned with. All you got to do is listen for 15 minutes. Not every now and again, not once a week, 15 minutes a day. Doesn't have to be the same 15 minutes. It just has to be 15 minutes. You do that, we'll gladly make you another member of Farwell's Force. Once you get a number, please remember it. That's all. And I'm going to write it down. Force for good, force for change, force to be reckoned with. It's the Mike Farwell Show and Rant or Rave on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We love hearing directly from you, so we give you as much access as we can. Every day, noon until 1, open phone lines on Mondays. That's for your rants and or your raves. Right back to the phones we go. Jason, good afternoon.
Miguel, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Jay. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So a couple things. A rant against your last caller. He used the R word when describing some drivers. I'm not trying to be the politically correct police here, but I'm sure there's a better word to use than the R word when we're describing stupid drivers.
You are right. And you know what? I have a button here that I pushed, and clearly it did not work. So I have to, because I pushed it, I have 7 seconds to push it. We need to fix that, and you're absolutely right.
It's all good. But secondly, my rant, again, against you. Well, even if you took the year off of cheering on the Steelers, I get it. Aaron Rodgers is a bit of a jerk.
A bit of a jerk? I'm a bit of a jerk.
But no, you're not at all. But historically, you look at the last 15 years, you know, the Steelers have had some players that, you know, have had some questionable conduct. You know, they brought in Michael Vick after his dog fighting a conviction. You know, they brought in, well, Ben had his own legal troubles. But
wait a minute, we had Michael Vick?
Yes. For 1 year, 2 years. Oh, it was a big controversy because of the dog thingy. But yeah, no, they brought in Michael Vick the 1 year. Yeah.
Did he play?
He did. He started when Ben got hurt. Yeah.
Shows what I remember.
Anyways, I hope you watch most, if not all, the game. I know you have an early morning, but go Steelers, go. And it would be great to see them in the Super Bowl. But if you have a Super Bowl party, make sure you conserve water and just bring bottled water with you.
All right, Jason, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. I'm still a fan. I just chose to invest my time elsewhere. You know, there's a Leafs game on tonight. Leafs have got points in 8 straight. Maybe I'll just stick with them. Mark, you are next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. I know Bellows was in the building on Friday. Did you get a chance to interview him?
Mark, do you not listen to this radio station?
Pardon me?
Do you not listen to this radio station?
Yes, I do.
Well, then, if you listened, you would have known I did get a chance to talk to him.
That's great.
Yes, he was our second intermission guest on Friday Night the Game. The one, the only, Brian Bellows. And I may never wash that microphone again, Mark. That's how much I enjoyed it.
Did you ask him why he is so awesome?
I tried to keep it as professional as I could, but I think he could see it in my eyes. I was madly in love with the man next to me in the booth.
Okay, right on, Mike.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. I try very hard to keep things on the up and up. And I think I did okay on Friday night. I think I should go back and listen to the audio. But I was very starstruck on Friday. I was over the moon for the opportunity. I was standing right next to one of my childhood hockey heroes, Brian Bellows, who was enshrined in the new Kitchener Rangers level of legacy, which is something I absolutely love that the team is doing. And I got to do the interview with Brian Bellows because my broadcast partner, Josh Piercy, said, I'm getting out of the way. You go ahead. And I tried to contain my excitement. I think I did okay. We had a great chat during the second intermission. Just another reason you should always consume your Kitchener Rangers hockey right here on your home of Kitchener Rangers hockey, right? Rant or Rave continues on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It is a Monday on your Talkback Hour, which means we rant and or rave on the show. Phone lines open to hear directly from you. And next up on Rant or Rave is Prina. Good afternoon, Prina.
Good afternoon, Mike. Alan and I would like to offer you our best wishes for 2026. We haven't called for a few months.
It has been a little while, and I was scrambling through my list here, and I couldn't find you quickly enough, and that's my fault for sure. Do you remember your number?
I'm 147, and Alan's 148.
Yep, there it is right there, 147 and 48. I love it. Thank you, Prina.
Isn't it lovely to have a list long enough to have to scramble to look?
I did a poor job of finding. I knew you were on there. And yes, it is very nice as hearing from you with those well wishes for the new year. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I was baking a coconut pie this morning, and I want to thank you for the earworm that you gave me. Miss American Pie.
Oh, my goodness, yes. Isn't that a great song?
Yes, it is. It was back when I was 18. Yeah, 18. God, that's a long time ago. But I haven't heard it lately, so yeah, kind of a little bit of a blast from the past, and I really appreciate it. But it's definitely earworm potential.
It certainly is that.
Okay, good to talk to you.
You too, Prina. Thanks for the call. You take good care.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. There you go. Farwell's Force member number 147 right there, along with her hubby, Al. Regular listeners to the show, and American Pie came up because This Week in Music History is something we do every Monday morning at 11 a.m. with our good friend and musicologist, Brian Allison. And we talked about that legendary song from Don McLean when it went number one upon its release. I won't date Prina too much here, but she said she was 18 and the song came out in the late 1970s. So you can do the math there if you want to put it together on Prina's part, but nonetheless, it's Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. We've all got it in our heads since we had This Week in Music History at 11 this morning. Every Monday at 11 on the show. Rant or Rave is every Monday from noon until 1. And we have Dave from Cambridge with us. I believe this is Farwell's Force member number 47, Dave. Hello, Dave.
Good afternoon, Mike. Quick comments on two topics in relation to your two guests you had this morning. I was going to call in, but I was doing my treadmill. First one is Mr. Craig and the government split and all that stuff. Unfortunately, I won't see any difference in my lifetime, Mike. And I raise this topic because this has been going on for decades. And it's not just the financial split. It's decades ago when the feds started downloading on the provincials the areas of responsibility. And then the provincials started downloading on the cities. And we all talk in the municipals about the financial splits all the time, but not the areas of responsibility that goes with it and defined responsibilities. And the feds and the provincials will never agree on it. That's why they're having their talk of separation in Quebec and in Alberta. And that's my one comment in regards to that. And the second one is on your guest you had on the rail service, high speed and all that stuff. I would like to see a dependable rail service from coast to coast. And what can bring this about, they can bring about, is bring in a new separated track from passenger to freight, right across from coast to coast. Then you can talk about high-speed service, but bring in a separated rail track first, coast to coast. Have a great day, Mike, and cross my fingers. I assume everything's going to go well Thursday morning when the astronauts come back. Have a great day.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. And your keen interest in all things, including the astronauts returning from orbit. Just on the point about the state that cities find themselves in financially. The feds download on the province downloads onto the cities are left cleaning up the mess. We all know what flows downstream, don't we? And I, for one, am kind of tired of talking about some sort of new fiscal arrangement. There is so much, like somebody's done the math, right? There is so much tax money collected in this country, all levels of government. Where in HE double hockey sticks does it all go? That's what I want to know. And if you're going to tell me, if you're going to look me square in the eyes and tell me with all honesty that there's not enough tax money being collected, that's fine. Let's have the conversation. But we have got to fix the financial mess that cities are in. They're not blameless in terms of how they spend, cities, but they're being asked to do way too much. And I'm tired of talking about it. We got to do something about it. Who's with me? Any MPPs listening right now? And no disrespect, but not the opposition MPPs, because we need people in the government right now to get serious about this. Because in case you haven't noticed by looking around, things are starting to fall apart. Have you driven on the roads right now with the potholes? Have you seen the encampments? Have you noticed the public drug use? Do we care to fix any of these things, or are we just going to, oh no, somebody else's problem? Somebody else's problem. Greg is next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon, Greg.
That'd be 38, Greg.
Farwell's Force member number. Good to hear from you, buddy.
Yeah, just some lighthearted raves to start with. Well, not lighthearted. Like, first, Buffalo Bills, especially Josh Allen, the way he just, plowed through all the injuries and got the job done. And I just phoned Bills Mafia. There's a spot on the bandwagon for you if
I'm still a Steelers fan. I'm just not investing time. That's all. Still a fan. Still love them. I'm still there. I got other things to do these days, Craig. Okay. That's all. Okay.
They were holding a seat just in case, but okay, all right. And next, I guess I saw the replay or a clip of the Brian Bellows when he was on the ice and just saying about how the jacket still fits. And,
yeah.
Has he aged at all? Like, he looks like he wasn't in a hockey card.
You nailed it.
I thought that was like an old shot, and then we're going to see now currently. But then it's like he looks the same.
It's funny, Greg. I talked to him about that during our interview on Friday night because I could see him down in the tunnel before he came on the ice, and I thought, wow, they gave him a retro jacket. But no. And the funny thing is, he told me his brother had hung on to it all these years, and they were together before he came to the game. And his brother brings out the jacket, and Brian thought, okay, well, here's the test. And he said it's a little snug, but it still fit. The guy looks fantastic.
Yeah, it looks like he could still be on the, Montreal did he end on? Or
no, he finished. He went to Washington and somebody else after he won the cup with the team that shall not be named, yes.
Okay, he was that. Okay, I remember. Like,
Minnesota, he was drafted by, though.
Yeah, I knew that. I just wasn't sure the rest. But it's like, wow, that looks like he could still lace up and help somebody. But so a rave to him, and then a little slight rant here. Jen doesn't have me a nickname yet, so keep on her for it, please.
What do you mean? What do you mean, Jen Tan? Like,
there's so many Gregs calling in, so just I thought, well, other people have nicknames, so come up with one for me, please. And she got Greggy, and I said no. I stopped that at age 5. So keep on her. She's working on it, but
okay. You need a nickname.
Greggy,
I got it.
That one can't happen. So
listen, while you're here, I was thinking about you earlier because you're always giving me a hard time. You're sending me messages on Friday mornings, wondering what the all request theme is. So
yeah, because if I didn't catch it earlier, yes.
Right. So I'm glad.
Music.
Did you catch it
last week?
No, today. This week. It's a new week, Greg. You got to work with me here, buddy.
Oh, I didn't know you put it out there already.
Okay, so this is the thing, and I thought of you because it's going to. I think it's almost full already because we're doing.
Where did you mention it?
I mentioned it 3 times already today. This will be time number 4.
Okay, and I can't tune in until 11:30 or 12,
buddy,
so I don't
listen,
think I've heard it since then.
You're a Farwell's Force member. We're going to have to work on you. But I was thinking of you. Here you go. It's songs about alcohol.
Okay.
Because of dry January. So if everybody's doing dry January, we're going to have a drink together figuratively through all Request Friday this week.
Okay, I'm on it.
All right, buddy. Better get in quick, though, because they are filling up so fast.
I could see. So, okay. All right, well. I'm driving right now, as you know, so I can't quite at the moment pop one in, but by the end of the workday, I'll hopefully watch for me.
All right. I'll look forward to it. Thanks, Greg.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye-bye. One of our Farwell's Force members. He does love the All Request Friday. I know you do too. If you want to make a request that fits the theme this week, alcohol, some drinking songs, drop me an email, mike@570news.com, or call in. And don't ask Jen for a nickname because apparently she can't do those. But she can take your requests down if you want for All Request Friday. David Drewe, when he was here earlier, said this is going to be so popular, you'll have to carry them over into Monday for the Hangover show. We just might do it. It's Rant or Rave, and we continue on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. By the way, Mr. Brian Bellows, when drafted by the Kitchener Rangers, 1981, was known as the next Wayne Gretzky. Let that sink in. That's not too much to try to live up to, eh? Drafted out of the Ontario Hockey League by the Minnesota North Stars, went on to play with the team that shall not be named, where he won a Stanley Cup. And then after that, it was Tampa Bay and Anaheim, and then Washington before his career ended after the 98-99 season. He still scored 17 goals in his last year in the National Hockey League. 485 goals in his 1,188 game career. Brian Bellows, former Kitchener Ranger, now a member of the team's level of legacy. Played for Minnesota, that other team that shall not be named, Tampa Bay, Anaheim, and then Washington. Back to the phones here on Rant or Rave this afternoon. Another Greg is with us. Good afternoon, Greg.
Good afternoon, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing just great.
Good.
Just great. This is a rant, Mike.
Sure.
I'm getting fed up with the political system. The people we have in power, all they are is talk, talk, talk. Nobody walks the talk. There's no question we need light rail from Windsor to Montreal. Ford can take his tunnel and you know what to do with it. A good friend of mine, his son, is married to the daughter of the person that owns the rig that drills these tunnels. And he said it's a joke. He said by the time they get done with it, most of the people that are here will not be here in this world, and the traffic will be beyond that tunnel by the time they get that drilled. So, still with me?
I'm still with you.
Okay, I just had another call from my other son. Anyhow, that money to be spent on that tunnel should be better spent on light rail or our health system, and put the money where we should put it. And second point, all this homelessness that 10 city they have there. All they do is talk about it. I think that little city they have out there on Herb Street, I never hear anything about it, but I'm guessing that it's working pretty good. Why can't they set up another one like that and get these people in there and have a central location where they can look after them? That's my rant for the day.
All right, Craig, I appreciate the rants. I appreciate hearing from you. I'm with you on the high-speed rail. We should have had it a long time ago. The fact that we don't have it now, more than a little bit on the embarrassing side. And absolutely, take any money, including the money being put into the feasibility study for the tunnel, the 401 tunnel, and invest it in something far more meaningful. I'm sure from an engineering perspective, because we can do so many incredible things, that the tunnel could be done. Doesn't mean it should be done. And just wrap your head around the fact, even if we did do it, what are we putting down there? 2 lanes? 4 lanes? 2 each way? Whatever? How is that going to relieve congestion, given the amount of congestion that we have on the highway right now? To the second point, and I hear you, Greg, about the homelessness situation, and we have a couple of smaller communities that are working pretty well. A Better Tent City, and then what do we call that encampment with the shipping containers out on Herbs Road? I forget the name we've given it. I apologize for that. But nonetheless, point taken, a point that's been made before, and I can tell you that the region was all set to go with another one of those type communities, getting some storage containers with as places for people to live and turning them into those little shelters and homes. Don't have the land for it. We do not have the land for it, which is a huge problem. So I really think, on this whole tax idea and our 3 levels of government, I think they're working on outdated ideas, right? When it comes to the collection and then allocation of tax dollars, it's time to modernize these things. It is, and I don't know why we are reluctant to get together. Let's all sit down in the same room and figure it out. We're smart people. I'm just not sure. Well, I don't know why we don't act like it. We can reform these things if we are willing. We could simplify tax codes. We could redistribute taxes. We could do lots of things, but we don't. I have no idea why we don't. Preston Paul, Farwell's Force member number 45. Good afternoon, my friend.
Good afternoon, Mike. Got a couple of raves and a rant for you.
Bring it on, buddy.
First of all, Don McLean's American Pie is a total classic.
So good.
And second, you must have had a great weekend with the 4-0 wins and losses. 2 Ranger wins, Toronto Maple Leafs win, and Steelers win.
Well, wait. The Steelers haven't won yet, Paul. They got to play tonight.
Oh, that's right, too.
Uh-huh. Last week they won, though.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah, that's right. But my rant would be, how many goals do you think Colorado is going to smoke on Toronto tonight?
Come on. Why you got to be that way? Because we're Leafs fans. I know. We're used to getting disappointed, right?
Well, it'd be a good test tonight. They got to shape up and start playing properly. So we'll find out tonight and how well they're doing.
I'll tell you something, Paul. You were right anyway. I did get 4 wins this weekend. 2 by the Kitchener Rangers, 1 by the Toronto Maple Leafs, and 1 by whatever team it was that beat the team that shall not be named on Saturday. That's a win for me, too.
Oh, yeah, that's right. What about the Steelers? How did you get interested in Pittsburgh?
Oh, when I was a kid, they were the team that was winning all the time. Simple as that. I jumped on the bandwagon, but I never left.
Okay, because most people jumped on the Cowboy bandwagon. I was not one of them.
Well, and I think, so my brother jumped on that one. So I think that was one of the other reasons. I thought, you know what? I'll go with this Pittsburgh team instead because it's the rival of my brother's team. So why should we get along, right?
That's right.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, Mike. You have a great day.
Thanks, Paul. Great to hear from you. I intend on having a great day. It's been great so far. And I'm going to squeeze in one more call because it's Mary. But Mary, we don't have much time.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
Well, I wish you all the best in the new year. And you know what? I really love that you call your lady beloved.
She is my beloved.
And that's a special term. But I want to say, I'm so sick of these not having places for these tent people. What's wrong with the middle of where the terminal used to be? Please, please, please help me.
Mary, it's an excellent question. I brought up before the building at 22 Frederick Street, which has been converted into student residences that Conestoga College will never use. So it's done. It's ready. 300 plus beds / rooms in there. Why not? Conestoga College, can we appeal to your goodwill? Or, to Mary's point, why not the old abandoned terminal on Charles Street? You've got indoor plumbing. You've got roofs, doors, shelter, etc. Maybe. I don't know. I know that we haven't been able to put together another small cabin or storage container community because we don't have the land. And I also know we are fresh out of time for today. But the good news is we get to do this all over again tomorrow. So please do join me. I'll be back here tomorrow morning at 9 and we'll begin the conversations again. Plenty more to talk about. My name is Mike Farwell. You are a force for good. Bye for now.